CD 7. Archie enjoyed his evenings, and he thought Marion did too. They each kept their separate room, but these days they always slept together. One night when they went to his room, she found he hadn't made his bed. She screwed up her face. "I'm not getting into that mess." He thought for a moment he was being rebuffed, but she chuckled and took his hand. "It'll have to be my place tonight." After that, Archie was always careful to make his bed and keep his room fresh and tidy. When the alarm went in the morning, she'd drift quietly away, or if he was in her room, she'd shoo him out. "There's no sense in having our own rooms," he said. "It doubles the laundry." "Who cares about that?" The laundry van called on Saturday mornings to collect and deliver, and it was another of Archie's chores to deal with that. There was always money available for expenses. Marion kept a full purse in a kitchen drawer and told him to take what he needed. She always undertook more than her share, not only of the jewellery work, but also of the housework. "We're partners in this, aren't we?" she asked. "We have to make life as easy as we can for ourselves." He loved everything about Marion, but he thought she wasn't taking his worries seriously enough. "Pull yourself together, Archie. Get a grip. You mustn't let your nerves get the better of you." The following Saturday, Prue and Carrie were having their bedtime cocoa in front of the dying fire when Maud came home. She'd been to the theatre with a fellow teacher to see Swan Lake performed by a touring ballet company. "Oh, it was marvellous," she exclaimed. "They're doing Les Sylphides next week, and I'd really love to go again. But guess what? When we came out, we were waiting at the stop for the bus home, and I saw Marion. She wasn't with Archie." "I'd bet she wasn't alone," Prue said sourly. "She was with another man. He walked to the edge of the pavement to hail a taxi and helped her in. Very gentlemanly." "Very posh. I've never liked her." Prue was vehement. "She'll never be any good for our Archie, but you can't tell him." "Was it the man we saw her with last week?" Carrie asked. "I'm not sure, but I don't think it was." Then they had to tell Prue about seeing Marion come to the door of the restaurant. "Our Archie is telling us they're going to be married, but it doesn't sound likely. I think there's something very fishy going on." "Theirs isn't a normal life," Maud shivered. "I'm scared for Archie." "He's a fool to get mixed up with a woman like that," Prue said. "All those diamonds and fancy ways, not his sort at all." "Marion has been very good to me and Connie," Carrie said. "I like her." "Then you're a fool too. If you want cocoa, Maud, you'll have to make it yourself. I'm going to bed." Archie hadn't been sleeping well, but suddenly not only was Tom Bennett at Gordon and Mail asking for more designs, but Rod was too, and he knew they would both pay well for the most original. Milner would want something very similar to what he was displaying in his shop, so Archie felt he could please everybody. Now, when he woke in the night, he made himself think of designs for bangles, brooches and rings, and he began to sleep better. He had to make time to sit down and start sketching them out, but Marion said, "This is more important to you than rubbing off assay marks," and arranged things so he had more time to do it. This was work he enjoyed doing, and he was surprised and pleased when a design worked out well. He also found that if he concentrated on that, it soothed him. Marion was delighted and praised his work. "Who'd have thought you could create designs like this when you were almost a nervous wreck?" "I feel much better," he told her, "since I added that tin of chocolate biscuits to our emergency supplies in the car." "Thank goodness for that. You are beginning to make me nervous." "Next time you have half a chance, show these designs to Carrie. Once you settle her mind about how you earn a crust, she'll not bother you with questions. It'll get Prue off your back too." Chapter 18. Every month, Mr. Leonard Groves sent for Carrie and she spent an hour or so in his office discussing her studies and the increasing complexity of the work she was given to do. He invited questions from her and told her she was making good progress. She felt happily settled with Atherton and Groves and was enjoying going to the pictures regularly with Tim. Aunt Prue took a great interest in the time she spent away from her, what she was doing, where she was going, who she was going with, and what films they saw. It didn't take her long to extract everything there was to know about Tim Redwood and to pass it on to the rest of the family. "There you are," Connie said. "I knew if you gave it a little more time you'd have no trouble finding a boyfriend for yourself." "He's not a boyfriend in the sense you mean," Carrie retorted. "Just a friend." "It's a start," Connie laughed. Tim felt his life was getting better generally. His mother was keeping in good health and encouraging him to go out and about with his friends. She had been getting on in life when she married and had been 43 when he was born. Because his father had died when he was 4, they had been all in all to each other. He felt very close to her. Jane Redwood was 64 now, but had been suffering from rheumatoid arthritis for the last decade. Her health was fragile, but miraculously the disease seemed to have gone into recession over the last few years, and she'd been able to do more. Tim helped her where he could with the heavier housework, carrying in the coals and lighting fires. They had very little income, and both felt grateful to Uncle Jeremy for providing a training by which he could eventually earn his living. It made Tim feel he had to work hard to show his uncle how much he appreciated his help, but it also increased the daily pressure and stress. His mother had inherited some of the family talent for figures and was now doing a small bookkeeping job for a recent widow who had taken over the running of her husband's business, a shop selling general groceries in a nearby suburban parade. At the same time, things had improved for Tim at work. The men in the office had seemed to look down on him. They thought because Jeremy Groves was his uncle that everything was made easy for him, that he didn't have the brains to make a good accountant. They couldn't believe Carrie had taken up with him and kept asking him what he'd had to do to achieve that. Really, he didn't know, but he was absolutely delighted that she was going out with him at least once or twice a week and seemed to enjoy it. The men all agreed that Carrie was stunningly good-looking and should be aiming to be a model rather than an accountant, but also that she was a cold fish. They said she brushed off all kisses and cuddles and had not allowed anyone to touch her or even get within yards of her. Tim didn't rate her as cold. She was friendly and had gone out of her way to help him in the office, and there was nothing in her attitude that showed she thought any the less of him. She made excuses for his lapses, while Robbie told him he was thick. All the same, Carrie had made it very clear that her complaint about the other men in the office was that they were too ready to kiss and paw her, and that he was just to be a friend. He was not to think of her as his girlfriend and heading for romance. Of course, none of them would have the wherewithal to marry until they were qualified, or be allowed to. But that didn't stop the other men from seeking love in the office. Mabel, the telephone operator, was said to be the most obliging. Tim knew that at the time of Gerard Milner's audit, there'd been something between Carrie and the jeweller. It had been discussed in detail in the office. Since then, Tim had tried to talk to her about it, but she was saying little, except that it was over. It led him to think that if Carrie was seeking romance, she'd be aiming higher than him. In the meantime, though, he was enjoying her company, and it made the men in the office look at him in a different light. They'd stopped harassing him. All in all, Tim felt he was finding his feet at work, and was more content than he'd been for a long time. The autumn had been cold and cloudy, but one Saturday, when he and Carrie spent the afternoon in the museum and the evening in the cinema, they found that it suddenly turned bright and sunny. As they waited for the tram home, Carrie said, "It might be October, but I heard on the wireless this morning that we can expect an Indian summer this year." "Yes, it looks as though we're in for a spell of sunny weather. How about taking a sandwich with us and going for a long walk tomorrow?" "I'd love to," Carrie's eyes were shining. "Do you know a nice place for a walk?" "Yes. Years ago, my mother used to take me on the train to Ainsdale. There are sand dunes there. It's a lovely place for a picnic. We used to walk the coastal path along by the golf course and see the squirrels in the trees. And get back on the train at Birkdale to come home. I've never done that, but it sounds great. I'll bring the sandwiches and come round to your place after breakfast. You might have to walk. There aren't many trams on Sundays." "That's all right. I'll bring some cake. Prue keeps our cake tins full." When Carrie drew her bedroom curtains the next morning, she found there'd been a touch of overnight frost, and the air still felt a little sharp. But already the sun was climbing into a deep blue sky, and it promised to be a day of mellow autumn sunshine. Prue was already downstairs preparing their breakfast of boiled eggs with toast and tea. She'd arranged to go to the 10 o'clock church service with Gladys, as she usually did. When Tim rang their doorbell, Prue let him in. "Hello, Tim. I thought you might be Gladys. Come in. Carrie won't be a minute." She took him to the kitchen and poured him a cup of tea before going upstairs to get ready. As it was half-term, Maud had gone to the Lake District with a colleague for a couple of nights, and Carrie felt she couldn't leave without first clearing the breakfast dishes. Prue came downstairs wearing her new winter hat with red feathers. "Is Gladys not here yet?" She adjusted it and her fox fur in front of the mirror over the fireplace. "It's a very nice hat," Carrie told her. "It suits you." "She must have overslept. I'll go and knock on her door. How long have the church bells been ringing? Have a good walk, you two." The front door clicked shut behind her. "No need for us to hurry, Carrie," Tim was saying when Prue made an urgent return, rattling the letterbox as she let herself in. She looked anxious. "Gladys isn't answering her door. Surely she can't still be asleep." "Don't you have her key?" Carrie asked. "Oh, I hope she's all right." Prue was rummaging in the drawer of the hall stand. "I know it's here somewhere." "Yes." She rushed out again. Carrie followed her. Gladys's house adjoined theirs, and the two front doors were close together. Only a 2-foot-high brick wall separated the two paths. Prue was frantically knocking on Gladys's door and ringing her bell. "I can turn the key, but the door won't open," she cried. "She must have bolted it," Carrie said, which was what Prue did every night before going up to bed. "Gladys?" Prue was calling with her mouth to the open letterbox. "Gladys? Open the door!" She turned back to Carrie. "Something dreadful must have happened." She was almost in tears. "The back door?" Tim suggested. "That could be difficult. I know she bolts the gate to her backyard." "Oh, my goodness. Do you think she's fallen and can't get up?" Prue was really alarmed now. "Is there an open window?" Carrie suggested. One glance upwards told her that the front ones were all firmly shut. Prue was shaking her head. "We've got to get in. Either she's fallen or she's ill. Oh, poor Gladys." "We'll have to break a window," Tim said. At that moment the church bells stopped, and Prue let out a despairing cry, her face running with tears. "I do hope she isn't hurt." "Round the back," Carrie said. "Let's get the stepladder out." They had an outhouse in the backyard with a coal cellar attached to one end and a lavatory to the other. Tim got out the ladder and set it up against the 6-foot-high brick wall that divided the 2 yards. A few moments later he said, "The kitchen window is open a little at the top, but the curtains are still drawn. It doesn't look as though she got up this morning." He dropped down into the adjoining yard and slid the bolts off the back gate to let Carrie and Prue in. "Tim," exclaimed Carrie, "look at the mess you've made of your trousers. That wall is covered with soot." "I'll need the ladder," Tim said, going back to fetch it. "I can't reach the window, it's too high." "Thank goodness it's open," Prue said. "Gladys would be cross if we broke the glass." Tim didn't find it easy to force the sash window up. "Oh, it's really stiff," he said. "Goodness knows when this bottom part was last opened." He managed it eventually and climbed in onto the draining board. Moments later, he'd taken the bolts off the back door and they were inside. Prue went to the kitchen door. "Gladys," she called. "Are you all right?" Carrie threw open the living room door. The curtains were drawn here too, and it was in semi-darkness. She switched on the light to make sure Gladys wasn't there. Tim looked in the parlour while Prue was stumbling upstairs. Moments later they heard her say, "She's not in bed." Her voice was almost a scream. "It hasn't been slept in." They shot up after her. "She must have gone out last night," Tim said, "and not come home. She never goes out after dark these days." There was anguish on Prue's face. "She's here," Carrie said, trying to keep the rising panic from her voice. "In the bath." Gladys's stout limbs were paper white, and she was partly covered by a thin towel. "She isn't moving." Carrie caught her breath. "Auntie Gladys." She touched her bare shoulder, and it felt so cold. She recoiled in horror. "She's like ice." "Gladys!" Prue pushed past her. "What is the matter? Oh, my God! Is she dead?" Tim said, I don't think so. I think I can see her breathing. Can't you?" "Just tiny breaths," Carrie said. "But she's unconscious." The bathroom felt cold, and moisture glistened on the tiles. "She must have taken a bath last night," Tim said. "She'd have been tired and found she hadn't the strength to lift herself out." The huge figure seemed almost to fill the bath. Carrie said, "She must have been like this all night. Oh, how terribly cold and uncomfortable she must have felt, lying naked on that hard surface and knowing nobody would come before morning. Oh, my goodness. When the water went cold, she must have pulled the plug out. The only thing within her reach would have been that towel." Prue let out a piercing scream and collapsed in a torrent of tears. Tim took both her hands in his. "Oh, God, Prue, please, calm down. Gladys needs your help. Who is a doctor?" She gulped. "Same as ours. Dr. Harris." "We'll have to fetch him." Carrie felt like weeping too. "Let's see if we can get Gladys out first," Tim said. "We'll never get her as far as her bed," Carrie pointed out. "She's very heavy." 16 stone, Prue said. "Get her bedside mat in here to cover this lino, and all the pillows and cushions you can find. Her eiderdown too. We must try and warm her up." With those in place, Tim went behind Gladys's head to try to lift her out. Carrie was at her feet. "Come and help us, Prue," he urged. They heaved and panted, but could barely lift her at all, never mind over the rim of the bath. "We're wasting time," Carrie said. "We're never going to manage it. You go for the doctor, Prue." Prue let out another wail of agony. "Oh, his surgery is nearly a mile from here." "The phone box," Carrie reminded her. "I'll go," Tim said, feeling in his pocket for pennies. "What's his number?" Prue made 2 attempts to tell him. "Maud made me learn it by heart, but I can't. Oh, dear." "I'll go," Carrie said. "Dr. Harris in Lombard Street. I'll get the operator to put me through." Prue was on the landing with her purse and offering her more pennies. "Put your coat on," Prue said. "Don't forget to tell him we can't get her out of the bath," Tim called after her. "We'll need help." Carrie ran. The nearest phone box was 2 bus stops away. She was almost in tears by the time she reached it. Gladys had been a source of love and support to her and Connie when they were growing up. She hated to see her suffering like this. Dr. Harris's wife answered the phone, and Carrie was very relieved to hear that he was at home and would come and speak to her. She found it a struggle to get the words out to tell him, but he said calmly, "Try and warm her up. I'll come straight away." Carrie jogged back, and minutes later the doctor's car was pulling up at the front gate. She took him up to the bathroom and found that Tim had covered Gladys with her eiderdown and tucked it round her as best he could. "You've done just about all you can here," the doctor told them, feeling for Gladys's pulse. "She'll need to go to hospital. I'll go and ring for an ambulance and some strong men from the fire brigade." By then, Prue had had as much as she could take. Her best hat was askew, and her face was ravaged with tears and anxiety. She was sobbing audibly. "Poor Gladys! Will she ever get over this?" Carrie tried to pacify her and persuade her to go home. When Dr. Harris returned, Prue let out another of her piercing screams, and then another and another. He turned her round. "Miss Courtney, you've had a bad shock. You need to go and lie down." Carrie and Tim helped her next door to her own bedroom. The doctor followed. Carrie removed Prue's hat and coat, and Tim her shoes. They tried to get her between the sheets, but she let out another wail of distress. "Oh, not in my best frock! I don't want to spoil it." "It won't hurt it," Carrie said. But they helped her remove it anyway and tucked her in. "I'll leave you a sedative," the doctor said. "You'll feel better when you've taken that." Prue struggled to sit up again. "But will Gladys be all right?" "I'm afraid that remains to be seen," he said gravely. "She's very ill. Hospital is what she needs now." On the stairs, he confided to Carrie, "Mrs. Nesbit is hypothermic. We must hope for the best." Once outside, he went to his car and put 2 pills in a small envelope. "These are for Miss Courtney. See she takes them. They'll calm her down." "Aunt Prue's highly strung," Carrie told him. That was what she'd heard Dad say. The ambulance drew up behind the doctor's car, and 20 minutes later, everybody had gone. Carrie locked up Gladys's house, then went home and put the kettle on. "Oh, I'm sure we could all do with a cup of tea. I'll take one up to Prue with this sedative." Tim sat down at the kitchen table and unwrapped the sandwiches he'd brought. "You do realise it's lunchtime?" "Oh, the last thing I want is food," Carrie said. "I feel sick when I think of what's happened to Gladys." Prue was fast asleep when she went up to see her. "You won't want to leave your aunt alone after that," Tim said. "Had we better put off our walk to next Sunday?" "Yes, of course. Thank goodness you were here, Tim," she said. "I don't know what I'd have done without you." A few days later, Aunt Prue went to see Gladys in hospital and reported that she'd recovered consciousness, but that she felt anything but well. She no longer seemed to have any strength, and it had affected her mobility as well as her rheumatics. She was full of aches and pains and would not be coming home until she felt better. Prue said she didn't like having an empty house next door. She felt lonely, and they all missed Gladys popping in to see them. They enjoyed almost a month of pleasant autumn weather, but early December brought the storms of winter. High winds, grey skies, and lashing rain. One Saturday morning, Carrie and Tim went to the lecture as usual, and when they came out, for once the weather seemed a little brighter. "Oh, thank goodness," Carrie said. "It's hardly been fit to go out." "Still a bit windy," Tim said. "But how about catching the ferry and having a walk along the prom at New Brighton? That should blow the cobwebs away." They were now in the habit of bringing a sandwich with them on Saturdays, just as they did in the week, so they need only buy a cup of coffee to stay in town all afternoon. When they reached the pier head, they ate their lunch in the waiting room. But Carrie wasn't sure that a trip on the ferry was what she really wanted. It was high tide, and she'd never seen such gigantic waves in the Mersey before. They were hurtling against the landing stage, sending spray high into the air, so that it was running with water. It was also rising and falling in the swell, and Carrie could feel the wind buffeting against her. She lifted her scarf over her head to safeguard her French pleat before the gale blew her hair clips into the river. The Royal Daffodil Ferry had difficulty coming against the landing stage, but it tied up on the second attempt. There were very few passengers when the gangplank crashed down, and Carrie wondered if it was safe to get on. But 2 frail and elderly men were ahead of them, and Tim still seemed enthusiastic, so she said nothing. "It's a bit slippery underfoot," he said as they were boarding. "Hold on to me." Carrie was glad to. He took her hand and wrapped her arm round his. The touch of his fingers sent a thrill down her spine. She felt secure and comforted. Tim was firm, strong, and upright, and she could rely on him to do the right thing. The few other passengers headed straight for the shelter of the saloon, but Tim led her up to the top deck to stand against the rail as the boat ploughed through the waves towards the mouth of the Mersey. Carrie watched him as he stood staring at the docks along the river bank. He wore no hat, and the wind was whipping his chestnut hair in every direction. He seemed to draw energy from the raging wind. His cheeks were pink, and his face shone with life. She was still hanging on to him, but they'd both anchored themselves to the ship's rail with their other hand. It wasn't just windy up here. It was a howling gale. She looked up and met his gaze. His brown eyes were full of golden light, and slowly his achingly familiar half-smile came. She felt a burst of love for him. Why hadn't she realized that for her, he was the one? She was about to throw her arms round him and tell him so, when an elderly man with a walking stick came haltingly along the deck towards them, battling the wind. She heard the old man's stick clatter to the deck, his exclamation as he slithered. But he saved himself from falling and ended up spread-eagled on a bench. Tim reached him first. He was trying to get up. "Let me help you," he said. "Carrie, give me a hand, would you?" Between them, they got the man to his feet and retrieved his walking stick from under a nearby bench. "Are you all right, sir?" "Just a bit shaken up." "Safer for you downstairs in the saloon," Carrie said, "and warmer too." "But full of cigarette smoke. I wanted a breath of fresh air, but it seems I'm not up to hurricane conditions any more." "Let us see you safely down," Tim said. By the time the old man was ensconced in the saloon, having thanked them many times, there was no point in going back to the top deck. They were nearing New Brighton, and anyway, it was more sheltered here. With her arm in a grip that said he meant to stop her having a similar accident, Tim led her to the ship's rail to watch the boat tie up. But for Carrie, that magic moment had been shattered and was gone. She was left wondering what she'd seen on his face. Joy in a shared moment, certainly. But had it been love? She'd been wrong to think it was love she'd felt for Gerard Milner. He'd shown her passion, and she'd responded to that. It was what he'd intended her to do, what he was aiming for. She found it hard to believe now that she'd been naive enough to believe she was in love with a man like that. He'd been too old and too flashy, and not at all the sort she admired. Tim had just shown her that he was a very caring person, but she'd already seen that when he'd tried to help Gladys. She'd known it since he'd told her of his struggle to care for his mother. She knew she could depend on him. She'd always thought him attractive and good company, but it hadn't been love at first sight. Love for Tim had seeped into her soul over time. He was honest and somehow exactly right for her. Yes, she was in love with him, but he didn't seem to feel that way about her. He'd never attempted to kiss her goodbye and only rarely touched her. It made her wonder if she was doomed to search for the right man for the rest of her life. After more than a month, Gladys was brought home by ambulance. She'd spent the last 10 days in a convalescent home to get her back on her feet, but even so, she was still very unsteady and had lost a lot of weight. Carrie welcomed her with a big hug. "You really scared us all," she said. "No more baths for you," Prue told her. "I don't think I could get into the bath now, even if I wanted to," Gladys said. "And the doctors tell me I'm lucky to be alive after a bad bout of hypothermia like that. My rheumatics have been terrible ever since." "We'll get you better," Prue said. "You must spend more time with me until you're fully recovered." Carrie visited her father and Marion frequently at weekends, and this Sunday her aunts went with her. Prue was full of the latest facts about Tim. "We've already met him," her father said. "Haven't we, Marion? Not news to us." He smiled wanly at Carrie and seemed weary. When Carrie helped Maud wash the teacups they'd used, she found her aunts were as concerned about Archie as she was. "He's really changed," Maud whispered. "At Connie's wedding, he took charge when the water tank burst, but now he's making no decisions at all. Did you notice that he refers everything to Marion, even whether he should open a packet of chocolate biscuits as well as the shortbread to have with our tea?" When they were leaving, Prue said, "What's the matter with you, Archie? Aren't you well? You look half dead." "I'm fine," he assured her. "Nothing wrong with me." Marion smiled at her. "He's in good health," she agreed. "He's working very hard. Perhaps too hard." "At what?" Prue demanded. But any mention of a job seemed to make Archie evasive. As far as Carrie could see, he was doing very little that could be called work, and she'd really embarrassed him by asking. Now even her aunts were curious. On the bus going home, they talked about his lack of a job and wondered where he got all his money from. "I wouldn't trust that woman," Prue breathed. "I really don't know what our Archie sees in her." Another week went by, and today Carrie meant to go alone to see her father. Was there a mystery? Something Dad wanted to hide? Prue thought there was. Once seated on the sofa in his house, she asked him again about his work. But today her father's eyes were smiling at her openly. "You all know I design jewellery. The Peter Pan collar, for instance." "You mean you're doing it all the time?" "Yes," Marion said. "Since he did that collar, everybody in the trade wants his designs. Why don't you take Carrie upstairs and show her?" She followed him up to the front bedroom. The bed did not appear to be in use, and he'd pulled a deal table into the bay window. "Come and sit here beside me." The chairs were already in place. "You're using this as a workroom?" "Well, a sort of study. The light is better here than downstairs. What do you think of this?" He was unrolling intricate patterns drawn oversized, so the detail could be appreciated, with the exact measurements marked. "This one is for a necklace to be made in different shades of gold." It was a delicate circlet of linked daisies with white gold for the petals and yellow gold for the stamens in the centre. Carrie gazed at it with delight. "That's marvellous. It'll look fantastic." "Here's another. I want the stones in this to be cabochon-cut rubies, set within a foliage of gold twigs and leaves so they look like berries. The rubies would need to be big, of course, which will make this expensive." Carrie almost whistled through her teeth with amazement. "It'll be gorgeous, Dad. I didn't realise you were creating jewellery like this." "Mostly I'm not these days. I sell the designs for others to make up. I used to make the whole thing in Johannesburg, but even there they were employing others to help with the easy bits." "Gosh, Dad, I imagined the Peter Pan collar to be a one-off." "No," he said. "Do you like these rings? I've put the gemstones in a perpendicular frame at right angles to a plain gold band instead of going round it. They're lovely, and very different to anything I've seen in the shops, even milliners. This one is to have 4 stones in different colours: ruby, emerald, diamond and sapphire in the most expensive version. I shall send this design to the firm that employed me in South Africa. They like it because they can do cheaper versions with semi-precious stones." And they make them up and sell them round the world?" Carrie marvelled. "Can you sell your designs anywhere else?" "Yes, there are jewellers in this country who want to buy them." "You are clever, Dad." "These are my patterns for brooches. I've put little springs under these dragonflies and birds so that when they're worn, the stones move slightly with the body of the wearer and catch the light. They'll appear to flutter." "That's a wonderful idea. I love all your designs." "Tell me what you like best. Then I won't have to think too hard when Christmas comes. But you haven't seen my bracelets yet, or my earrings." Carrie felt much happier now she understood how Dad made his living. She went home and told Prue and Maud. "Why couldn't he have told us this in the beginning?" Prue demanded fiercely. "It's just like Archie to play his cards close to his chest, and to think we worried about him not being able to find a job." That evening, Carrie went round to see Connie and John and told them what she'd discovered. "He could have done all that in South Africa," Connie said. "Why did he need to come home?" "Well, he wanted to come for your wedding," Carrie pointed out. "He wanted to give you away." Chapter 19. The next morning, when Archie and Marion got back from an early shopping expedition, there were letters waiting for them on the mat. Archie picked them up. "There's one for you," he said, with a sinking heart. "It's from Amsterdam." Marion ripped it open. "From the diamond cutters," she said, and read it out to him. "We have completed the work, and your order is ready for collection." She started to put their shopping away. Archie felt things were happening too quickly. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No, I'll go by myself at the beginning of next week." "You'll be carrying stones worth a fortune. Aren't you afraid they could be stolen from you, that you could be attacked?" "Archie, you know I've given a lot of thought to bringing those diamonds back. I've got it all organised. I'm going to do what Rod did and hide them in my clothes." Marion always bought clothes that were stylish. Now, in the mid-1930s, the fashion was for longer skirts and a silhouette that was slim and closely fitted, but which flared out at the knee to mid-calf. She had several softly tailored dresses with little or no padding, a very feminine style, and outdoors she wore a full-length coat over them. "Your clothes are different to Rod's," Archie said. "Clearly you can't hide the stones in your coat, as you might want to slip that off in a restaurant or the lounge on the ferry." "I've decided that the safest place would be to hide them in my underwear." Archie was familiar with her underwear. She liked pure silk garments, which he understood were top of the market, but his mind boggled at the thought of where she could hide gemstones in that soft, slinky material. With this in mind, one Saturday she brought home 2 identical pink silk petticoats. They were full-length and traditional in style, with 3 inches of lace round the bottom. She started by removing the lace from one and stitching them together so that one acted as a lining to the other. Then she opened the side seam on the left-hand side and inserted some small coins between the 2 layers. She was sewing in their sitting room, and he'd watched her wriggle out of her dress and currant slip to try the new garment on. Her skin was still suntanned, and it had sent a frisson of lust down his spine to see her stripped down to bra and pants. "I'll wear it for the rest of the evening," she'd said, "to see how it feels." But 10 minutes was enough. "Although they can't be seen," she said, "I can feel the coins rolling around the hem. They're uncomfortable and distracting." "I can hear them," Archie said. "The rattle of cash. What have you put in there?" 4 farthings and 2 halfpennies to represent the weight of the stones and the gold they'll return to me. Stones won't roll round as easily, but if they keep touching, they'll make a noise that could give you away. I need to give this more thought." By the following week, she had decided to sew the 2 layers together up the seams on both sides, almost to the waist. "Then if I run another seam down about an inch away, that will give me 2 long, narrow pockets. I'm going to attach the 2 bodices together to give the garment more stability, and with some adjustment of the lace round the top, it won't be too obvious that it isn't a normal underslip." She had reinserted the coins, this time wrapped in cotton wool, and found she could wear the slip all day and hardly notice the weight when it was equally balanced. Now Archie said, "It's dangerous carrying that fortune. Of course I'm worried." "I'll be all right. Only you will know I have the stones on me." She paused. "Be careful not to tell Bill." "But he knows about the tiara being broken up, about where it came from and that you and Rod took it to Amsterdam," he said. He was with us when Milner produced the thing. He won't have missed that you will be fetching the stones back. But he won't know they're ready for collection, or that I've gone to get them. He won't be able to pass the news on to any of the rogues he knows. She patted his shoulder. Do stop worrying, Archie. Come on, let's go and pick him up and get to work. Act as normally as you would. Be your usual friendly self. Just don't let him know another thing about what we're doing. Marion went out alone and took an hour longer over her lunch that day. In the car going home, she said, I've booked first-class tickets for the train and the ferry and telegraphed to the diamond cutting company the date and time of my arrival. You remember Eddie Jurgens, don't you? No, I don't think I do. He was a good friend of Rod's in Joburg, and a good friend of mine, too. He looked after us when we went to Amsterdam and put us up in his flat. He's offered to put me up again. All Archie's suspicions flooded back into his mind. In his flat? He has a live-in girlfriend. He'll give me a slant on how things are progressing in Joburg. I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I think I should come with you to make it safer. It's as safe as houses. Eddie will meet me off the ferry, take me to his place, and come with me to the diamond cutters the next morning. He says they'll provide lunch, and he'll drive me back to the ferry terminal for my return journey. All the same, Archie, you poor dear. You're a nervous wreck, too intense and worried stiff about what might go wrong. You've reached the state when it's affecting everything, even your health. Even his prowess in bed. I should be thinking more of you. I know exactly what you need. Really, you're not cut out for this sort of life. I should arrange for you to go back to South Africa now. I should pay Bill off and get rid of him. Both of you have become weak links. But if I did that, it would bring all activity here to an end. I couldn't finish the work Rod has lined up for us on my own. It would take too long and wouldn't be worth my while. I'm sorry. Poor old Archie. She felt sorry for him. He needed more and more reassurance and encouragement to keep going, and he was not nearly so much fun as he'd been in Joburg. I hate the thought of you going away, he told her. I'm not looking forward to being left on my own. I'll miss you terribly. You'll hardly notice I'm gone, she told him briskly. You know Milner wants to make new jewellery from these stones. Have you drawn up any designs for them? You keep me so busy I don't have time for anything else. Well, you'd have time while I'm away. You should keep Milner in the picture. Discuss your designs with him, as they'd be made up in his workroom. Archie was pulling a face. He'll want what he thinks will sell best. He knows what will sell best in his own shop. Come on, Archie. This is work you say you enjoy. On Monday morning, Marion had to make an early start to go to Amsterdam. For Archie, it was not enough to drive her to the station. He insisted on escorting her to the platform and carrying her overnight case for her. Lime Street was the terminus, and the train was waiting. He opened a door for her. A carriage to yourself? No need to wait and wave me off, she said, reaching up to kiss his cheek. I'll go and pick Bill up, then. Work him hard. Thanks, Archie. He clung to her for a moment. It's only for 2 nights. She smiled and patted his arm. I'll come and meet you. Ring me from London. I've got a sleeper this time. I won't feel so tired when I get back. Right, I look forward to seeing you again before dawn on Wednesday. Goodbye, Archie. She sank into the corner seat with a sigh. There was relief on her face. He couldn't bring himself to walk away. You look as though you'll be glad to see the back of me. I'm just glad to get here on time. That's the first hurdle accomplished, isn't it? The journey will give me a chance to think and plan ahead. But I'll miss you. Goodbye, love. He leaned over to kiss her again. He was early picking Bill Dainty up and had to read his newspaper for 10 minutes before he came. Ever since Marion had told him money was missing from her purse, He'd not felt at ease with Bill and was very conscious of things he mustn't talk about. But he felt pity for the man. He'd never looked well, but now he appeared positively ill. Archie was afraid he wasn't looking after himself as he should. Bill was chatty by nature, but only until he settled down to work. Then they both concentrated almost in silence on what they were doing. At lunchtime, Archie suggested they go to a small basement cafe in a side street where they'd been before. The tea urn permanently hissed, and the place was full of steam and smoke, but the food was good and the service quick. Archie felt he couldn't talk about his current concerns, and now that it was just the two of them, he decided that the best plan was to get Bill talking about his own difficulties. "You had a shop once, didn't you?" he asked tentatively, cutting into the pork cutlet on his plate. "Yes, in Lord Street in Southport. I had it for over 10 years. High class, then. It would have outclassed Milner's." "You've obviously had plenty of experience in the trade." "I've worked in it all my life, ever since I left school." "How did everything go wrong?" Bill pulled a face. He hadn't shaved properly this morning. "I was running a similar scheme to the one you're using here, but in a smaller way. I'd been doing it for years. I suppose I became overconfident that I'd not be caught." "Bad luck, then. How did it happen?" "The police were investigating a large theft, the proceeds of which I had fenced." He looked up from his plate with a sad smile. "It had happened 2 years earlier. Somebody must have let slip something to involve me. The first I knew about it was when 2 detectives came to question me. Just routine, they said, and I thought I got away with it. I heard no more for ages." Archie's fork was shaking in his hand. "But you hadn't?" "No. I didn't know it, but they went on quietly watching me. Eventually they came with a search warrant and caught me with stolen jewellery on my premises. They were investigating a different robbery by then and brought in an expert who went through everything in my shop with a fine-tooth comb. I went to prison." "For the first offence?" Archie was pushing food round his mouth. He couldn't swallow it. "That wasn't the first. I'd had a few fines for other things. But that time they turned up enough evidence to give me a prison sentence. They figured I'd been doing it for years." "What was prison like?" "Well, I didn't enjoy it, if that's what you're asking, but it wasn't actually being inside that wrecked me life. It was the outcome. The result." Bill had cleared his plate. He laid down his knife and fork and pushed it away. Archie gave up on his meal and followed suit. "What was that?" "I couldn't run my business from jail. My wife put in a manager, but he was no good." He shrugged and turned to study the blackboard on which the day's menu had been chalked. The busy waitress reached their table and crashed their used plates together. "What do you have for pudding?" she demanded. "Bread and butter pudding, please," Bill said. "And you, sir?" Archie felt he'd choke if he ate another mouthful. "Nothing for me, just a cup of tea." "I'll have tea too," Bill said. When the girl had gone, he went on quietly. "I went bankrupt. I lost my shop, my wife, my son, and my home. It was never worth it." Bill's pudding was slid in front of him, and Archie watched him eat with gusto. He'd not been able to put out of his mind the report of the robbery that he'd read in the newspaper round his fish and chips. Couldn't that lead to them being caught in much the same way as had happened to Bill? The waitress removed Bill's plate. "Very nice," he said. She slapped 2 cups of tea and the bill on their table. "The problem is, Archie, that although I've served my prison sentence, there's no end to the trouble it's brought. No honest jeweller wants to employ me. Why should they when there are plenty of other men seeking work? They don't trust me not to lift their stock. The only work I get is from folks like you, and that could land me back behind bars." Archie had a nightmare that night. Hadn't he always been scared that something similar would happen to him and Marion? He worried his way through the next day and night, with every moment without Marion seeming twice as long. He was back on the station platform 20 minutes before the milk train was due in. He was expecting trouble, even disaster. But there was none. Marion stepped off the train and threw her arms round him. "Everything went exactly as planned. Absolutely no trouble with the customs," she whispered. "The stones have been beautifully cut. They're unbelievably improved. I can't wait to show them to you." "Let's get you home," he said. "Did you manage to sleep on the train?" "Yes, not as well as I do at home, but better than sitting up all night." Archie cooked a breakfast of eggs and bacon for them, while Marion changed out of her bespoke petticoat. They ate at the kitchen table with the stones and her loop spread out on a bit of black velvet. He was fascinated by them. "Magnificent workmanship," he said, putting the biggest sapphire down. "Has Milner decided on what he wants you to do with them?" "He's got clients for 2 grand necklaces. I've given him a few designs, but he has to show them to his customers and they haven't decided yet. I want to hear how your trip went, every detail." She smiled. "I dozed and had lunch on the train going down. I enjoyed the ferry crossing." "Did that man you know meet you off the boat?" "Eddie Jurgens?" "Yes." She gave him another smile. "With his partner, Kristen?" "The Dutch?" "Well, Kristen is, but he's from New York, and talking of returning there soon." "He probably has Dutch antecedents with a name like that." "Are you sure you don't know him?" Archie shook his head. "I don't think I've ever met him." "What's he like?" "I remember him having a series of partners in Joburg, but he never married. He's a good-looking man, positive and full of energy. Like Rod, he knows how to enjoy the best that life can offer and can be relied upon to give his guests a good time. They took me to a restaurant for dinner and then back to their flat to spend the night. We were up late talking, of course, and had a few drinks. He hasn't changed a bit. Good fun. What with catching up with the gossip from Joburg and discussing future plans, there seemed to be precious little time left for sleep." She chuckled. "I haven't told him how old I am, but I know he's 14 years younger than me. It took me all my time to keep up with him." "You haven't told me how old you are either," he said. "No. It's one of those feminine little secrets I don't tell anybody. I had to take a long hot shower to get me going the next morning, but they were perfect hosts and provided coffee and a breakfast of warm bread, cheese and ham. Very continental." Then it was a short drive to the diamond-cutting premises, where we were taken under the wing of one of the directors. He told us that Rod had booked a radio-telephone call, and it came through while we were there, so we were both able to have a word with him. "How is he?" "Fine. It was soothing to hear him say he's fully in control at his end, and to know all is going well in Joburg." We were shown the diamonds I'd come to collect, and I inserted them into my underskirt in the ladies' cloakroom. Nothing could have been easier. The director took us out to lunch, and Eddie drove me back to the ferry. "Oh, I'm glad that's over," Archie said with relief. Chapter 20. Tim Redwood was feeling very low. He was worried about his mother. She didn't complain, but over the last few months she'd looked increasingly ill, and he could see she was in pain and trying to hide it from him. He and Carrie had completed this term's course of Saturday lectures, and now, like everybody else, they spent the morning at work. A week ago he'd had to say to her, "Do you mind if we don't go out on Saturday night? I have problems at home." Her big green eyes had met his. "What sort of problems? You haven't been yourself recently. I can't help but notice." "It's not me. My mother isn't well. Do you mind?" "Of course not. We can go to the pictures next week." But the following week she was no better. Tim was afraid Carrie might think he'd grown tired of going out with her and was making excuses to avoid it. She'd surely wonder why he wanted to stay in with his mother on a Saturday night. As she'd already been going Dutch with him, he was worried she wouldn't understand why the arrangement couldn't continue. He was also afraid she might find another friend to take his place. He'd tried to explain that really he wanted to be with her, but he just couldn't tell his mother he was going out again after being at work all week. He knew her face would fall. Worse, he knew that Carrie had noticed what a zombie he'd become in the office. Several times she'd completed her own task and then taken over a job that had been allotted to him, finishing it without saying a word to anyone. But on the tram going to work on Tuesday, she asked, "Is your mother feeling better now?" He shook his head. "I think she's worse. I had to call the doctor out to her last night. I'm sorry, Carrie." "Tim, it's only right that you stay with your mother when she's not feeling well. You never tell me much about your home life. I hope it isn't serious." She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis years ago, but recently she's felt better and been able to do more. I'd come to believe that would be permanent. "Oh, no. You mean her illness has suddenly come back?" "It's come back, but it hasn't been sudden. Her strength has been draining away over the past months. I've had to call out the doctor several times." He was glad he'd told Carrie. He wanted her to understand. Her green eyes were studying him. "You have to help more about the house?" "Yes." He shook his head. "It upsets Mum to see me struggling with the cooking and the cleaning. She wants to do it, and when she finds she can't finish a job, it makes her feel worse. She's losing her confidence as well as her strength." "Can I do anything to help?" Carrie asked. "I don't think anybody can," he said miserably. The following week, she said, "I'm worried about you. You don't look well." "It must be possible to do something that will help you both. Come on, talk to me. I want to know what's happening. Your mother's an invalid now." "Yes, I'm afraid she is. All through my school days she felt ill, but miraculously, 5 years ago she began to feel better, do more about the house and get out and about. I'm sure much of her stiffness remained, but she learned to live with it, and though her gnarled fingers couldn't do fine work, they grew no more twisted. She was cheerful, and even took on a little job to help a friend when she was widowed. Mum found it handy to buy most of our weekly food from Harrison's, a family business selling general groceries in a parade near us. Ethel Harrison provided a chair and a chat, and over the years they became friendly. Ethel lives over the shop, and since her husband died, she's been running it, but she didn't know how to keep the books. Mum does that for her, and helps with stock control and reordering, that sort of thing, and we plough back the wage she pays us into more food. We both expected that happy state to continue, but the doctor has told us that Mother has had a flare-up of her old disease. I hate to see her in pain. It's almost constant, and it leaves her weak and disheartened and unable to do very much at all." Tim knew how to manage on very little money. It was what they'd always done. But it was getting harder. He could feel Carrie's sympathy and went on to explain further. "When I was very small, we had a daily cleaning woman. But over the years we found we could no longer afford such a luxury. Now the extra expensive medicines and doctor's bills is upsetting our budget. I learned to do a share of the housework when I was a child, and now I'm getting up earlier to reset the fire in the grate and make breakfast for us both before I go to work. I have to make sure there's something ready for her lunch, and I cook an evening meal for us both when I get home." "Tim, it must be very hard to find time to do all that. I'm so sorry." His eyes burned, and he had to struggle to stay in control. "When Mum became really ill, I had to take over her job because it's our only source of income other than my allowance as an articled clerk. I now spend my Sundays keeping Ethel's books up to date." "Tim, you can't possibly do everything. There are only so many hours in the day." He sucked at his lip. He'd felt he could cope with these setbacks in the short term, but his mother wasn't getting any better, and he'd been warned as to how her illness was likely to progress. He dreaded to think of his present workload as permanent. He knew his work at Atherton and Groves was suffering. He had no energy and was slower than he had been. He'd stopped studying or even reading his accounting-related books. During the weeks leading up to Christmas, he and Carrie were part of a 4-man team drawing up the annual accounts for a restaurant in the city centre. They'd been invited to have an early lunch with the staff before they opened for business at midday. Mr. Stott, their leader on this occasion, raised his water glass to the owner. "Thank you, sir. This is very generous of you." They began talking about Christmas. "It really gets going for me by the middle of December," Carrie told them. "Every year Aunt Maud takes us to her school to see the children in their nativity play, and Aunt Prue takes us to a carol concert at her church." Tim had nothing to say. The festive season was creating more difficulties for him. But Carrie caught his eye and asked, "Do you have anything planned?" "Not really. My mother and I are invited to have lunch with my Uncle Jeremy on Christmas Day. It happens every year, you know, family tradition." "We have family traditions too. Aunt Prue does turkey and plum pudding for Gladys and Uncle Bob's family, and then Gladys invites us all to her house for tea. And on Boxing Day, it's Uncle Bob's turn to have us all over to a big lunch at his place." Today in the restaurant, it was sausage and mash, followed by rice pudding and prunes. "I'm quite looking forward to the feasting." "So am I," Tim said. "But we won't be able to walk to Uncle Jeremy's as we've done in the past. It would be too much for Mum now." Uncle Jeremy usually ordered a taxi to take them home in the early evening, as it was getting dark by then. "And my mother's worried that she'll not be able to last out for the whole afternoon." Tim was also worried about how he would produce the little presents they traditionally took with them, worried about finding presents for anybody. When work was over that afternoon and he was walking with Carrie to the nearest tram stop, the Salvation Army band was playing carols in the street. It was a longer journey home than from their office, and the city seemed full of life and light. The shop windows they passed were full of festive glitter. The spirit of Christmas was all round him. Everybody else was in good cheer. "You don't seem to be looking forward to it," Carrie said. "I can't cope with any more of this," he burst out, and was immediately sorry he'd let that slip. He felt her take his hand. "Can't cope with Christmas? Tim, it's not something to be coped with, it's something to be enjoyed. What's the matter? You've seemed a bit down in the mouth for the last week or two. Is your mother no better?" "She isn't likely to get better," he said. "It's not that sort of illness. As time goes on, she's likely to get worse." He went on to explain about having no money to spare for a taxi fare on Christmas Day. "You'll just have to tell your uncle," she said. "I don't see your difficulty there. You see him almost every day, don't you?" "Uncle Jeremy is very good to us. Very generous. He's been keeping us going for the last few years. Mum doesn't like to keep asking for more." "But he'd expect you to tell him that she isn't as well as she was last year, and why it's difficult to accept his invitation. And if your mother tires more easily than she did, he'll understand and call the taxi early. You might even think it's strange if you didn't tell him. You aren't thinking straight, Tim. You're making mountains out of molehills. You seem exhausted, almost too tired to do anything." "I am tired." "Well, you know why." "Coming to work and doing more about the house?" "Yes. You're trying to do everything. You can't." End of CD 7. CD 8. He couldn't stop his troubles bubbling out. "There's worse," he went on. "On New Year's Day, the family has always come to us for afternoon tea, and I dread asking them round, though Mum talks as though it's all going to go ahead as usual." "It'll take you both out of yourselves, raise your spirits, So why not? He couldn't look at her. Our relatives all have plenty of money, but we've no cash to spare for fancy cakes and presents, not now that it has to cover her medicines and doctor's bills. Mum used to bake, but she can't anymore, and I wouldn't know where to start on that. I can make cakes, Carrie said. I could bake for you, and I'll have plenty of time before New Year. It could be my Christmas present to you. Carrie, you're very kind, too kind, and I can't buy you a present. Besides, Mum can no longer act as hostess. The tram was approaching her stop. He stood up to let her get off. I could come and fill teacups for you if you want help, she said. Aunt Prue gives large family parties, so I'm practised at that. Except your Uncle Jeremy is the boss. Will Leonard be coming? Oh, golly, they'll all know me. Of course they will. Does that matter? Well, I'm articled to Leonard. He's my mentor, and he controls my future prospects. It makes me feel differently about him. My great-uncle William will be coming too. He's Jeremy's father and Len's grandfather. You won't know him. He retired from the firm years ago. Quite a family gathering. Carrie wasn't sure she'd done the right thing by offering to help. Tim watched her turn away from the pavement as the tram moved on, and was almost overcome. He mopped his face with his handkerchief, fighting down the emotion that threatened to engulf him. Carrie was offering more help in addition to all she did for him at work. He told himself it was gratitude and friendship he felt for her, but at this moment it was tenderness too. He knew she didn't want love. Hadn't she said she'd had to fight off the attentions of other men in the firm? She'd wanted no more outings with Robbie and that lot, so Tim hadn't allowed himself to show any romantic affection. If friendship was all she wanted, friendship would be what he gave. He wasn't going to do anything that might put her off. Over the last few weeks, all the time he was doing little things to help his mother, his mind had been on Carrie. He was in no doubt it was love on his side, but whatever his feelings, he could see no way forward. It would be 3 or 4 years before they were both qualified and could afford to even think of marriage. He needed to put thoughts like that right out of his mind. His mother would always have to be supported, and he couldn't possibly desert her. They had the house, but it was too big for them, and as he walked up the road he could see that it was easily the one most in need of a coat of paint. In fact, it looked decidedly shabby. Since his father had died, it had had little maintenance. Mum was too proud to tell Uncle Jeremy they were no longer able to cope and ask for more help, and she didn't want Tim to do that either. Jeremy has a family of his own to look after, she told him. He's already providing us with a great deal. As soon as he let himself into the hall, Tim could hear a choir singing God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. His mother always made an effort to dress and come down by lunchtime, and she had the wireless on and the fire blazing up to welcome him home. He held out his hands to warm them. There was a row of cards along the mantelpiece. 2 more cards came today, she said cheerfully. She wanted to send cards in return, though her handwriting was uneven and spidery. Tim had to write out the envelopes, and he delivered them by hand if he could. His mother went on talking about the festive season. She no longer ate very much, but he thought she was looking forward to having Christmas lunch at her brother's and seeing all the family again. It must be lonely for her now she couldn't get out and about. She used to have a lot of friends, but not many came round to see her. We'll be able to manage afternoon tea for them on New Year's Day, won't we? They won't expect much. If you bought a cake and a few biscuits, that would do. Tim told her of Carrie's offer. Oh, that's marvellous. And your friend will come and help too? She said so, but I think she's somewhat uncomfortable at the idea. She's articled to Leonard and knows Uncle Jeremy professionally too. What difference does that make? She's afraid they'll be embarrassed, Mum. Nonsense! Why should they be? Tim grimaced. He wasn't looking forward to any of this. "Only 5 more days and it'll be Christmas. It'll be a rest for you, Tim." A rest was a different matter. He was looking forward to that. "But what are we going to do about presents?" he asked. "It certainly is embarrassing when we receive gifts and have nothing to give in return." He felt he was nearing the end of his tether. By Christmas Eve, Tim and the team had completed their work at the restaurant and had only to tidy up small jobs in the office. He could see that nobody was in the mood for work and little was being done. Spirits were high and became even more buoyant when they were told they could all go home and start their holiday at lunchtime. Last week it had been agreed that instead of buying gifts for all their colleagues, they would put their names into a hat and each would draw out another name and give a gift, costing about 1 shilling in value to that person. This way, everybody would have a small gift at little expense. Tim had drawn Miss Woodford, their receptionist, and had ready a box of 6 lace-trimmed handkerchiefs. The office was noisy with excitement and joie de vivre when they were getting ready to leave and were giving out their cards and gifts. Miss Woodford seemed very pleased with the handkerchiefs, and they were admired by the other ladies. "Very expensive," she said. "Handmade lace. I bet you paid more than 1 shilling for these." Carrie's eyes were shining as she came over to Tim's desk, wearing her hat and coat. She'd been laughing with the typists, and he could see they were all excited now that Christmas was close. It made him feel even more downhearted. "Are you ready to go home?" she asked. Tim was glad to escape. On the tram, he felt awkward about the gift he'd prepared for her. It wasn't quite what he wanted to give her, but he handed it over as her journey neared its end. "Happy Christmas, Carrie." "Another present? Lovely, but I thought it was agreed the lucky dip in the office would be enough." "I wanted to give you something myself." She turned the package over in her hands. It was neatly gift-wrapped and tied with ribbon. She gave him a wide smile and asked, "Am I allowed to open it now?" They'd done that with the office gifts. "Of course." She gasped with delight as she shook out a gossamer silk scarf in swirling shades of blue. "Tim, it's beautiful and made of real silk. Almost everything in the big shops is now made of what they call art silk. That means artificial. But this is so much nicer. The real thing. Thank you, I love it. It'll go beautifully with my best coat." He couldn't doubt her pleasure in it, but her enormous eyes looked searchingly into his. "It's very generous of you. Miss Woodford reckons you did her proud too. But didn't you say you had no money for Christmas presents?" He took a deep breath and sucked in his lips. He should have expected this. "Money is short. I didn't mean to tell you, but... Well, the scarf was a present to my mother last Christmas. She's never used it." He could see Carrie biting her lip. And the hankies too." "Yes. Mum said it was sensible to use the gifts in some way, and I wanted to give you a present." He could see tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm afraid I've no present to give you now." She took a Christmas card out of her bag and put it into his hand. "I shall bake cakes for you and bring them on New Year's Day when I come to help at your party. Happy Christmas to you and your mother. Try to enjoy it, Tim." She skipped off the tram and turned to wave and smile as she always did, and Tim felt his heart turn over. Chapter 21. Carrie enjoyed the 2-day Christmas holiday with her family, but she missed Tim. She couldn't stop thinking about him, wondering how he was getting on and whether he was enjoying the festivities. Surely he must find it hard not to. She looked round her own living room, bright with the decorations Prue brought out each year, the Christmas cards set out along the mantelpiece, along with the holly Uncle Bob had given them when they'd last gone to his house. The leaves still shone, and it had lots of red berries. Bob had a holly tree in his garden and had sent her home with a big armful, so she'd given some to Tim to spark up his home. When she closed her eyes to sleep, she could see him standing before her with his tousled chestnut hair and his slow, half smile. When she returned to work, everybody was relaxed and happily anticipating the next break for New Year, and even Tim seemed better. "Yes, I enjoyed it," he said briefly. "But you haven't forgotten about coming to help at Mum's tea party?" Carrie could see he was still anxious about that. "Of course I haven't. Aunt Prue is doing some baking for you today," she said. "She wants to know how many people will be coming, and I didn't ask you about that." 5 adults and 2 children, and there'll be us 3. Mum doesn't eat much." "Prue was expecting it to be many more. She gives huge parties. But it won't matter if some of it's left. It'll keep for a day or 2. You can eat it later." On New Year's Day, Carrie knew she'd have to walk to Tim's house because no trams would be running. He'd offered to come and help her carry the cakes, but she'd said that wouldn't be necessary. She could manage. An hour and a half before his guests were expected, she was ready to set off. She wore the scarf he'd given her. It felt cosy on this dark, raw day, and not only suited her coat, but gave her best blue dress a lift and filled in the neckline. She knew Tim travelled 5 stops further on the tram. He'd drawn a map for her and explained how to find his house. But she was sorry now he wasn't with her, as she struggled to follow his directions. He lived further out from the city, and it was a different sort of district. These were bigger and older houses in large gardens set further back from the road. She checked twice that she'd found the right house. Her first impression was that it was imposing. It was a large Victorian detached villa, but the front garden looked seriously in need of attention. It had become overgrown in the summer, and the borders had died back in tangled masses. The paint on the large front door was peeling. Tim opened it before she had time to ring the bell. I was watching for you," he said, taking her bags. "Come on in. I'm very grateful for what you're doing." "Gosh, these are heavy. I should have come to help you carry them." The hall was huge and chilly. "Here, let's have your hat and coat." He paused by the hall stand to hang them up, and Carrie saw his eyes widen with horror. "You can't wear that scarf," he hissed under his breath. "My Aunt Enid is coming. She gave it to my mother last year. She might recognise it. Sorry, Carrie, I should have said." Hurriedly she whipped it off and folded it into her handbag, shivering as she did so. "Oh dear." He looked disconcerted. "Beware thy sins will find thee out." Sorry. Come and meet my mother." Jane Redwood was small, hunched, grey-faced and gaunt. She was sitting in a large armchair drawn close to the fire and struggled to get to her feet. "Don't get up, Mrs. Redwood," Carrie said, going forward to shake the hand she offered. She saw it was misshapen and twisted, and it filled her with pity. "It's very good of you to come and help Tim like this. Help us both, really, I suppose. I'm very grateful." Her voice shook. The sitting room seemed vast, but a grand piano took up a lot of the space, and the rest was filled with sofas, armchairs and small tables. There was a 6-foot-high gilt mirror over the fireplace, a little foxed in one corner. Tim was urging Carrie to the kitchen. We need to get things ready, set the cakes out on plates," he told his mother. It was downright cold as well as draughty out there, but she saw he'd set out plenty of cake stands and plates in several sizes, all of good quality gold-rimmed china. She began to unpack the cakes, while Tim produced linen and lace doilies to go under them. "Mum made me wash and starch these," he said. "Aunt Prue uses paper doilies. It's much less trouble. And paper serviettes," Carrie added, when she saw him getting out lace-edged tea napkins. "Mum thinks these are better. Besides, we already have them, so don't have to buy paper ones. Gosh, cherry cake. That's one of my favourites. Prue made it, and this chocolate log is her speciality. I did the fairy cakes. Maud made the scones, while I cut the sandwiches this morning. This is an enormous spread, Tim said, beaming with gratitude. The best I've seen for years. He'd already set the table in the dining room, and it seemed they were all to sit round it. Carrie had expected to hand the food round. Afternoon tea, after all, was not a formal meal. Tim poked the fire into a blaze and put more coal on. Is it cold in here? We don't often light this fire. Carrie suppressed a shiver. It was freezing, and the room smelled of damp and disuse. Not as warm as in the sitting room, she said diplomatically. And it hadn't exactly been cosy there. The family haven't been here since last New Year, Tim said. And that afternoon didn't go well. I spilled tea on Uncle Jeremy's suit, and there was hardly enough of anything to go round. A frugal tea compared with the feast you've brought us. You'll be impressed. Carrie trailed behind him back to the kitchen, feeling at a loose end now her offerings were set out. He'd already filled a huge kettle and boiled it on the ancient gas cooker. It stood steaming with 2 silver teapots beside it. Everything's ready now, he said. Let's go back and talk to Mum. But at that moment the doorbell rang, and Tim went to let the newcomers in. They brought a blast of freezing air with them as they helped in a very elderly and doddery gentleman. The ladies kissed Tim, and his mother appeared at the sitting-room doorway to hug the children. They were filling the hall with noise and movement as they hung up their coats. Tim came to Carrie's side. This is my Uncle William, my great-uncle, really. He's 95 and hard of hearing, so you'll have to speak up. I'm pleased to meet you, Mr. Groves, Carrie said at the top of her voice, offering her hand. I wish you all the best for the new year. He took a hand between both of his. They were icy cold. 1 year is pretty much like another to me, my dear. To the other menfolk, Tim said, You know Caroline Courtney. The other 2 Mr. Groves seemed to notice her for the first time and appeared surprised, but they smiled encouragingly at her. Of course, of course. To the ladies he explained, She's articled to Len and she's come to help so that this year I can avoid the embarrassment of pouring tea down Uncle Jeremy's best suit. Carrie, this is my Aunt Enid, and Mary is married to Len. These are their 2 children, Robert and Polly. They all greeted her in a kind and friendly manner, but Carrie couldn't help feeling a little overawed. She was used to being summoned to the offices of the 2 Mr. Groves, and until now she'd discussed only business matters with them. It made her feel stiff, awkward, and out of place. Are you going to be an accountant like my dad? The boy asked. You must be very clever if you can do that. I'm going to be one too if I can, but I'll have to work hard at school. Carrie was relieved. She felt better able to cope with the children. How old are you? I'm 10, and Polly is 7. No, you're not. You won't be 10 till next week, the girl retorted. Tim came to sit beside her, and she thought he seemed anxious and on edge. The next hour passed slowly for Carrie. The adults tried to talk to her, but she felt she lacked Connie's ready chatter. Old Uncle William dozed off. I think he finds this rather tiring, Mary said. But we couldn't leave him at home by himself, not today. He still keeps up his household, but of course he relies much more on his staff these days, especially his valet, who has to do almost everything for him. Tim's mother was clearly making an effort to be sociable. She was smiling and seemed more alive than she had before, but Carrie felt she was making a brave and determined attempt to appear at her best. When at last Tim went out to boil up the kettle again, Carrie went too. With the teapots filled, he ushered his guests to the dining-room table. My goodness, what a magnificent spread, exclaimed Len Groves. The other adults echoed him. Carrie made these cakes to help me, Tim told them. His family were beaming at her and seemed to be seeing her in a new light. All of them? asked Mary, Len's wife. Yes, Tim said firmly. Carrie went round with a milk jug in one hand and a teapot in the other, filling the teacup in front of each guest. "Thank you, Carrie, for acting as hostess for me," Jane Redwood said. "My hands aren't up to pouring out now, and Tim can be a little clumsy." "Where did you learn to bake like this?" Enid wanted to know. "My aunts taught me," Carrie said. "They brought me up, and they bake every week." Mrs. Redwood's knotted hands were struggling with a sandwich. Carrie was touched with sympathy. Tim's mother was more disabled by her illness than she'd expected, and was doing her best to hide it. Jeremy bit into his sandwich hungrily. They're absolutely delicious. What have you put in them?" "Cottage cheese and grapes," Carrie said. "And Prue made the wholemeal bread." They were equally loud in their praise of the cakes. She thought Tim began to relax then, and with her food being so obviously appreciated, she was able to do the same. It seemed Uncle Jeremy had brought 2 bottles of sherry with him. He opened one, and Tim brought in the tray of glasses he'd set ready so they could drink to Jane's health. There was a flurry as they prepared to leave. Carrie saw Jeremy Groves look at her. "Can we offer you a lift home? We've come in 2 cars, so there's plenty of room." "Thank you, but it's all right. I don't live very far away." She'd intended to help Tim wash up. "It's very dark and cold outside," Mr. Grove said. "It would be safer for you to come with us." "Yes," said Tim, holding out her coat for her, then handing her the bags in which she'd brought the food. "Much the best thing. Thank you for everything, Carrie." He shot her an affectionate glance. "I'll see you at work tomorrow." Carrie found herself on the back seat of a very large car. Enid Groves thanked her for helping Jane and Tim and praised her baking over again. "I wish I could make cakes like that," she said. To Carrie, it seemed only moments before she was back in her own living room. Prue and Maud were eating high tea in front of a blazing fire, and the warmth seemed to envelop her. They were full of questions, and she tried to tell them all about it. She'd expected Tim to walk her home, and felt as though she'd been cut off abruptly from him. It was a long time before she felt really warm again. Chapter 22. After the jollity of the holidays, Carrie found it hard to settle down to serious work in the new year. The first time she had reason to speak to Leonard Groves, he said, "I must congratulate you on your baking, Miss Courtney. I did enjoy your chocolate log." And before she could tell him that her Aunt Prue had made it, he'd launched into business matters. Old Mr. Groves never mentioned seeing her at the New Year tea, but he was a more visible presence in the office, checking on everything. Several people attracted his displeasure for wasting time, Tim more than once. Carrie kept her head down and worked hard until the sound of Jeremy Groves's raised voice brought her back to what was happening near her. "Timothy," he was saying with a face like thunder, "what do you think you're doing?" Carrie's view was of Tim's back, his head and shoulders bent and sinking lower. I'm sorry." Mr. Groves carried on in that vein for 5 more minutes. Nobody in the office could fail to hear, and they all understood that Tim was getting a rollicking for ignoring some basic principle of accounting and making a complete hash of the job he was doing. His uncle was almost shouting with rage. Tim's back told Carrie he was in despair. When she saw that Mr. Groves had finished and was about to storm past her desk, Carrie stood up. "May I have a word with you, sir?" "Now?" he barked at her. "Please, if you can spare a moment." He didn't say no, so she followed him to the quiet of his own office, where he threw himself into the chair behind his desk. She closed the door softly behind her, now feeling a bit shocked at what she'd done. She stepped forward and remained standing. "Sir, I know I'm speaking out of turn, and I hope you'll forgive me. Timothy Redwood is battling with home circumstances that are almost beyond his control." "I'm fully aware of his home circumstances," growled Mr. Groves. his face twisting with anger. "With due respect, sir, I don't think you quite understand. In recent weeks, Tim has had to take on the part-time job his mother was doing because she's no longer able to manage it." "Can't manage it? Why not? She said she was feeling better over Christmas. She looked a little better, and on New Year's Day she was in good form." "Tim says she's finding it increasingly difficult to do anything. She wanted to hold her usual New Year tea for you, and Tim felt he had to arrange it, so I offered to do the baking for them. He said his mother put on the best show she could in front of you, but she went to bed half an hour after you'd gone." "What?" He took off his heavy spectacles and rubbed his puffy eyes. "Tim has no time to himself, and he's exhausted. He's doing most of the housework as well as spending his weekends doing her job." "He's trying to do the impossible. What is he trying to prove? Why put himself through that?" "Because it brings in the money they need to buy food. I know it's none of my business." "It isn't, Miss Courtney." "Tim says you already do a lot to support them, and his mother has told him not to ask for more. She's proud and sees that as a form of begging." His expression had softened. "So you've taken it upon yourself to tell me?" "I felt I had to. Tim can't carry on doing all this. Before coming here in the morning, he makes breakfast for them both and cleans out the grate and sets the fire ready for her. He cuts sandwiches for his lunch and makes sure there's something for his mother to eat. On days when she's feeling really ill, he fills a flask so she can have a hot drink. He can't keep this up and give proper attention to his—" He held up his hand. "I've got the idea, Miss Courtney. No need to go on." With the shopping in his lunchtime and the hot meal he cooks when he gets home from the office, he can't possibly be at his most alert at work, and he doesn't have any time to study. "Yes, thank you. That will do." She dared not look at his face. Instead, she stared at his silver and cut-glass inkstand. "I'm sorry, but I thought you should know." His dark eyes gleamed from beneath the folds of flesh. "Am I to understand that Timothy is your boyfriend?" That threw Carrie. It was her turn to be brusque. "No, he is not." She wished he was, and hoped he might be in time, but that wasn't how things were. She couldn't show her feelings, not to his uncle. She was over-forceful. "We are thrown together all the time, and we've learned to rub along without too much friction. I consider Tim to be a colleague and a friend, and that's how he sees me." She paused and took another deep breath. "And while I'm at it, sir, I feel you're harder on Tim than you are on the rest of us. I mean, you expect more of him." She got as far as the door and turned to say, "Sorry, sir," before whisking out without so much as another glance in his direction. When she returned to the general office, every head was bent over its desk, and apart from the scratching of pen nibs, there was complete silence. Tim's back still signalled despair. Nobody stirred as she sat down. Carrie mopped at her forehead, her knees suddenly weak. She'd spoken up without giving any thought as to how Mr. Groves would take her intervention. She hoped he wouldn't hold it against her. Later that afternoon, Carrie couldn't help but notice that Leonard Groves went to Tim's desk to have a word, and they left the office together. Tim had not returned at 5 o'clock. She cleared his desk and slid the documents he'd been working on into his top drawer. The next morning, he'd kept a seat for her on the tram. "You told Uncle Jeremy about my problems," he said. "Yes. I thought somebody should," she admitted. "Please forgive me. You were like a zombie in the office, and nobody can be on top of things when they're tired out. Besides, he was telling you off." "Thanks." Tim gave her a rueful smile. "You won't believe how kind he's been. The whole family have, really. He took me home, and Auntie Enid had already made a hot casserole for our dinner. Leonard and Mary came later. and we had a family conference round the table. Auntie Enid is going to find us a daily help to come in 6 mornings a week, and Len is arranging for Mum to visit her specialist again to see if more can be done to help her. It looks as though you've sorted me out. Carrie pulled her face. Sorted your Uncle Jeremy out, more like. The family said I should thank you. Good. I was afraid your uncle had been mad at me. You did too good a job on New Year's Day. Between us, we put on such an impressive show that they thought everything was fine. Yes, I had to tell him, though I thought you'd be mad at me too. You would have dug a deeper and deeper hole for yourself and still be in the doghouse. Yes, as I said, you've sorted me out. The corners of his mouth curved into a half smile. Mum's pleased. She says you've rescued me from drudgery, and now I must get stuck into my books before I get left behind in the coursework. Over the following weeks, everybody noticed how much more alive Tim became. Robbie laughed and said the display of ire from his uncle had had a miraculous effect. Tim told Carrie, "My family thoroughly approve of you." On Saturdays now, he took Carrie home with him to a lunch made for 3 by Mrs. Beattie, the home help. She'd been cooking and cleaning for other people for the past 30 years and had a wide repertoire of tasty meals. Tim's favourite was scouse. After they'd eaten and cleared away, Carrie and Tim settled down at the table with their books for an afternoon of study. After that, they felt they'd earned an evening out and usually had a drink in a pub before going to the pictures or to one of the many theatre shows in the city. Carrie still insisted on paying for her seat, but Tim liked to treat her to the drink and to the coffee or ice cream they had in the interval. Carrie felt Tim was much happier, and now both of them were making progress in their studies. She was enjoying it all and thought he was too. Mrs. Redwood spent a week in a nursing home where her condition was assessed, and then Aunt Enid took her to Bath for a few days' holiday. When she returned home, she felt much better and was able to potter about the house again. Archie felt he had to get out of England. "I think we should book our passages back to Cape Town," he said to Marion. "If I had a date to look forward to, it would settle me down. And if we had to get out in a hurry, There was a look of pained forbearance on Marion's face. "There is no reason to think we'll have to get out in a hurry," she said. He knew he kept bringing this up, but she never wavered in her determination to see the job through. "You'll have to be patient if we're to get through the work Rod has organised. There's a lot more to do in Southport and in Chester. But when that's done, we'll take the maximum profit, and that will give us enough to live on comfortably for the rest of our lives. We'll never have to put ourselves in this position again." Archie sighed. "Yes, but I still have to make these pieces for Milner. We have to use the stones you've had recut." Her deep brown eyes looked at him fondly. "You'll enjoy doing that, you know you will. I feel the net is closing round us, that you're obsessed with the idea. It's as safe as it can be. Just relax and go with it." Archie tried. On the 20th of January, the old king died, and he found everybody was talking about royalty. It caused endless interest and discussion, because they all hoped that the Prince of Wales would take his place as Edward VIII. But he was deeply involved with an American woman who'd been twice divorced and was thought unsuitable to be Queen of England. Archie was afraid that problem would be as difficult to settle as his own, and it added to his feelings of doubt and insecurity. One dark, wet morning in February, Archie and Marion set off to pick up Bill Dainty, but today he wasn't waiting in his usual place on the corner of his road. Archie halted the car while the rain lashed against its windows. "Poor sod," he said. "Waiting here must be awful in a downpour like this." "But he isn't waiting here," Marion pointed out. "Drive down to his house. It looks as though you might have to go in and get him." Archie backed the car up and turned into the road. "Stop!" Marion's voice was almost a scream. Stop! I can see 2 policemen going into one of the houses. Is it Bill's? Archie, is that Bill's house? He was just in time to see a police helmet being taken off, and seconds later the door swing shut behind a portly frame. He threw the gear lever into reverse and backed up as quickly as he could. Moments later, he was speeding along their original route. "What can Bill have done to be visited by the police?" Marion said. "Something's happened." Archie was agitated. "I don't like this. He knows where we'll be working today. Perhaps he'll come on later." But they saw nothing of Bill that day, and Archie worried himself sick. The next morning, he was waiting in his usual place. "What happened to you yesterday?" Marion barked at him as he got into the back of the car. "I overslept. Sorry." "We saw the police going into the house where you have a room," Archie told him. "What have you done now?" Bill looked sheepish. "Have you been charged with some offence?" "Stealing from a parked car," he admitted. "What a damn fool thing to do!" Marion burst out. "What did you steal?" "A coat and a fruitcake." "Bill, you should have more sense," Archie wailed as he drove on. "All right," Marion said. "How and where? Let's hear what happened." She had to dig the story from him. Bill was reluctant to say anything. "The car was parked outside the Black Dog, my local pub. I was unlucky. The landlady was watching from an upstairs window and recognised me." "That was unbelievably careless of you. Stupid, in fact," Marion told him. "I have noticed before that you've got light fingers. You've got to stop thieving other people's belongings. Attracting police attention like this could get us all into trouble." "Sorry," he said. "I won't do it again." Once they reached the shop where they were to work, Bill took a brooch from the box and settled down without saying any more. Archie had the feeling that they still hadn't heard the full story. "Come on, Bill," he said. "Tell us the rest." "I ate the cake," he said. "It was very good." A month or so later, Marion said, "I'll not come to work with you today, Archie. I need to sort out the bills and get the books up to date." Archie liked Marion to be near. He felt safer when she was close, but he knew she'd be cooking dinner for him when he got home. The kitchen was full of savoury scents and added warmth, but Marion was not her usual happy self. "Do you remember going to Edmund Cooper's, that jeweller in Birkenhead? I've had a bit of an argument with him today." Archie poured out 2 glasses of wine. "What about?" "He said he gave us 17 pieces to work on, but received only 15 back. He's missing 2 dress rings. Both are clusters of small diamonds set in platinum. I've spent half the afternoon checking over our lists, and it seems we did have them." "I think I remember doing one." "It had built-up shoulders with tiny stones there too." Archie took a gulp of his wine. "It couldn't have got mixed up with stuff for another shop." Marion shook her head. "No, I've checked. We look after everything very carefully. We have to." "I'm shattered." "Oh, Lord. Is it Bill again?" She sighed. "Apart from us two, nobody else had much opportunity." Archie exploded. "Because we did nothing when we suspected he was taking cash from your purse, he thinks he can get away with anything. What are we going to do about this?" "I don't know. I wish we could trust him." "We never should have. He's got a criminal record." "Mr. Cooper has refused to pay our bill unless we return his rings or make recompense for them." "We ought to talk to Bill about this or sack him." "If we sack him, it will take us longer to finish. I don't want to stay here any longer than we have to, and I know you don't. That's why we said nothing to him the first time. It makes sense to do that again." That gave Archie several days of acute anxiety. How could he stay calm when the police had charged Bill with theft? "It's coming too close to us," he worried. And I don't think he's telling us the whole truth about what happened. It seems crazy to steal a fruitcake. He must have been hungry because he ate the evidence, as the only thing he's been charged with is stealing a cashmere coat. He's not saying anything about taking those 2 rings either. Well, he wouldn't, would he? He'd expect to get the push from us if he admitted to that. Archie refilled their wine glasses and shivered. In one way, it makes sense to say nothing, but I can't meet his eyes without thinking and wondering. They discussed the pros and cons all evening and worried about it. "OK," Marion said. "We can't make up our minds, so why don't we just leave things as they are and see how he goes on?" The following Tuesday, they were all tired after a long day working in Southport. Marion was yawning. Archie had driven them back to Liverpool and was about to drop Bill off near his rooms when he stirred on the back seat and said, "I can't come to work tomorrow, boss." "Why not?" Marion demanded, instantly alert. "I've got to go to court, but it's just the first hearing. I'm charged with stealing a coat, I told you." "Is that tomorrow? What time?" "I've been told to be there for 9:30. Archie felt his heart race, and his cheeks were on fire. Any mention of Bill being charged made him nervous. Marion said calmly, "Really, Bill, you might have given us more notice. Will you be available for work the next day?" "I expect so. Yes, it's only the first hearing. I'll be tried later. Nothing'll happen for a month or so." "Ring and let us know everything is all right," Marion said. "Tomorrow evening or early Thursday morning, then we'll pick you up as usual." "Everything'll be all right," Bill said confidently. Archie stopped the car to let him out. He could see his own hands trembling. It made him tighten his grip on the steering wheel. "If we don't hear from you, we won't come," he said. "We need to know it's safe." "I'll ring you," Bill said, "but it'll be safe enough for you. Why shouldn't it be?" "If they send you to prison again, I'd rather not be hanging about near your rooms," Archie spat out angrily. "Goodbye, Bill," Marion said, and prodded Archie. "Come on, let's go. For heaven's sake, calm down." "Bill's not telling the truth. I'm sure there's more to it than he's saying." "We don't know that. No need to panic. If it was only a coat, surely there'd be no first hearing. Doesn't that mean it's going to a higher court?" "I don't know," Marion said. Archie couldn't calm down. He was filled with foreboding. Marion opened the wine and helped him cook dinner, but it didn't help. "You need a nightcap tonight," she said, and poured him some brandy before taking him to bed. She held him in her arms to soothe him, but all he wanted to do was sleep. He pushed her away, but his mind kept going round on the possible consequences of Bill being charged. Marion slept soundly, while he spent hours listening to her soft, regular breathing. Often now Marion took Wednesdays off to work on the Starbright accounts. She'd not said whether she would tomorrow, because they'd talked of nothing but Bill's difficulties. But if she did, Archie decided he'd go to court and sit in the public gallery without telling her. He had to know exactly what was happening. The next morning over breakfast she said, "You look worried stiff. I'll come to work with you today. I don't like to think of you being on your own." It spilled out before Archie could stop it. "I'd like to go to court and hear what happens to Bill," he said. "It's the only thing that will settle my mind." "It'll make you more nervous? I don't think you should." "No, it won't." He couldn't lift his gaze from his scrambled eggs. "Shall I go instead?" "Perhaps we should both go," Archie said. "I wouldn't be able to do any work anyway." "All right, at least his case is to be heard early. If all is well, we can all go to work afterwards." Archie found the formality of the court sobering. Marion led him to a seat in the public gallery where Bill would not be able to see them. Proceedings did not start promptly, and Archie felt impatient and restless. But when they did, he very quickly heard enough to be gasping with horror. William Dainty was charged with breaking into a jewellery shop in Chester on the 4th of October last year and stealing a diamond ring and a brooch valued at £2,000, and also on the 7th of March of stealing a camel hair overcoat and a briefcase containing £600 in banknotes from a parked car. These items were recovered from his rooms, together with a silver and cut-glass hip flask, on the 18th of March. Marion felt for Archie's hand. "Let's go. We've heard enough." "Oh, goodness, that was one of the shops we took him to." Once outside, Archie took deep breaths. "The police have been there to investigate that theft. They could have found something to lead them to us." "But they haven't," Marion pointed out firmly. "I knew he was lying." Archie could feel himself shivering. "That's it. We can't work with him again after this." Chapter 23. "Our problem remains the same." Marion's lips were set in a hard, straight line. "We put up with Bill, or we kick him out and do all the work ourselves. If they send him to prison, that decision is out of our hands," Archie said. "I think we should pack up now and get out while we can." "He won't be going to prison until his case is tried. He can do a lot of work in the meantime." Archie felt he couldn't hold out against Marion's wishes, and as usual he gave in and agreed that Bill should stay. Over the next month or so, they worked him as hard as they could. They managed to finish the work they were booked to do in Chester, and that left only Southport and a little more in Liverpool. They didn't mention the loss of the 2 rings to him, but Edmund Cooper continued to hassle them for recompense. Archie thought he was reaching the end of his tether. His need for safety made him cling to Marion. She was strong, but even so the future looked scary. They'd been living as man and wife ever since Rod had gone, and getting on really well. Just to see her smile at him could still send a thrill down his spine. He loved her, but the fact that they weren't married meant he didn't have the stability he needed. To feel secure, he had to know Marion would always be with him, that their relationship would be permanent. He'd suggested once or twice that they get married, and though she'd humoured him and vaguely agreed, she'd sidetracked him and put off setting a definite date. He felt she'd not taken it too seriously. They were both kept busy working long hours, and she too must have been stressed by this way of life. He made up his mind to propose marriage formally. He'd set all his cards out and make sure she understood that he was serious. They would decide together when this work for Rod had accumulated enough capital, and then get out and have a more normal life. When she was going out the following Saturday morning, he said, "Come home early from your jaunt into town. I'll cook dinner tonight, something nice. A little treat?" Marion smiled. "Is it a special occasion?" "I hope it will be." "I know it isn't your birthday. So what is it?" "Wait and see." Archie believed she'd be pleased to have their living arrangements made legal, that marriage would settle them both down and they'd feel better. He meant to make his proposal as romantic as possible. He bought a couple of bottles of champagne and some candles for the table. He wasn't much of a cook, but he could manage a roast, and as Marion was fond of chicken, he bought a large one. She came home early as arranged. The meal was almost ready, and she ran upstairs to change into a new red dress she'd just bought. He looked up from carving the chicken. "You look lovely." "You have made an effort," she said, when she saw the candles. "So, what is this occasion?" It came out in a rush, and it wasn't how he'd planned it. "I want us to be married. Do say we can go ahead on this now." He could see her freezing and lost confidence. "I love you. You must know I do, because I keep telling you." "I do, Archie, and you mean everything to me, but I don't know about getting married now." Heavy disappointment settled on him, leaving him frustrated and shaking. "Surely living arrangements such as ours put you in a precarious position. Don't you want to have things made legal?" Her face was white and stony. Of course I do." She was smiling again. "I want it as much as you do, but we're in such a rush at the moment trying to finish off all this work we've started. I'd like us to have a big wedding with all the trimmings, and we haven't the time or energy to deal with that right now. Wouldn't it be better if we put it off until we were back in Joburg?" "But when will that be?" Archie had had in mind a quick trip to the register office to make it legal. "I want to get back there too. I've suggested before that we make a firm booking, but you never agree." "I do now," she said, and kissed his cheek. "It should only take us another 4 or 5 weeks to finish what we want to do here. We'll go full tilt ahead and get as much done as we can, and you must get Milner's bespoke jewellery finished. Then I'll sack Bill Dainty and we'll go." "You'll book our passage?" "First thing tomorrow morning. I'll go upstairs now and find out which ship it'll be." "Any cabin they have available," Archie urged. "Yes, the best they can give us." "Archie, I'm very happy the way things are now, but I do understand it isn't enough for you." "I need more. I've had a few lonely years and I want to know you'll always be at my side. I'd like to design and make matching wedding and engagement rings for you. They can be any style you fancy. I've done a couple of designs to show you." She put out her hand to cover his. She already wore several rings with large, expensive diamonds. "Archie, that's a lovely idea. You can make them up in Joburg. You'll have more time once we get there." "All right," he said. "We'll just get engaged now." "I'm sure that's the best thing. Is that champagne you've bought? Let's have a glass." Archie was mollified. "We get on well together, don't we? We're as near married as we can get without the ceremony. I just want to tie the knot." "We will," she said, "just as soon as we have time. Anyway, now we're firmly engaged, we can start thinking about our wedding. All our friends are in Joburg, aren't they?" She helped Archie dish up their dinner, which turned out to be excellent. Afterwards he took her to his workroom upstairs and showed her his designs for her wedding and engagement rings. "Archie, they're both beautiful. But yes, I like this one best. I love it." "Good. I'd like the stone to be a princess-cut emerald. A big one that will stand out, about 3 carats. The ring is to be of platinum with built-up shoulders, as I've drawn here, in this pattern, set with small diamonds." "Oh, it's a gorgeous design. I'm going to love it. Where's that timetable? Let's see what ship we'll be leaving in 5 weeks' time." "Good, it's the one Rod travelled on, the Transvaal Castle. I'll make the booking in the morning. Would it be rather naughty to open another bottle of champagne tonight?" "Why not?" Archie felt better. This was what he needed, to know that everything was moving in the right direction. We have 2 important things to celebrate. Already he felt more settled. He'd got Marion to make the booking, and she'd agreed to marry him soon. He'd made some progress, even if she wasn't going to fix an early date for it. Archie said nothing to his family about his plans, but he tried to involve himself in their affairs. He found quite a lot was happening for them, and he felt quite bucked at the prospect of becoming a grandfather. Connie was all excited. Things were moving fast for her. She'd given in her notice at work, and she and John were looking round for a small house to buy. John was full of big ideas for their future, and as soon as they'd got married, they'd started saving for a home of their own. Connie was haunting estate agents, and at the weekends, Archie was driving them round to look at what had appealed to them on paper. Marion was interested too. When she saw a board outside a likely-looking property advertised for sale, she made him stop to assess the outside, and if she liked it, she made a note to give to Connie. Prue and Maud were busy knitting matinee coats and mittens for the coming child. Carrie had felt separated from her twin from the moment she'd married, but now the gulf between them seemed to be getting wider and deeper. Undoubtedly, Connie was moving more quickly through life's major experiences. She developed an interest in prams and cots and was busy collecting a layette of clothes for her baby. Carrie was envious that she would be mistress of her own home. Connie's cheeks became rounder, and she had mauve shadows under her eyes that gave her an ethereal beauty. As the weeks went on, she began to look decidedly pregnant. Carrie knew that she herself wasn't ready for that yet. She was more than happy learning to become an accountant. She had Tim take her round, and she was head over heels in love with him. But unlike all the other men she'd been out with, he showed not the slightest romantic interest. He was friendly, but a little distant. She would have liked him to show more of his feelings. Maud was getting excited. She was due to retire at the end of the summer term after her 60th birthday. Teachers were allowed to retire at the age of 55, but she'd decided to work on in order to increase her pension. Prue had worked until she was 60, and as they shared all the expenses, it seemed only fair. She'd been teaching for 36 years without a break, and loved the 7 to 8-year-old children in her charge. She'd appreciated the long school holidays that teachers enjoyed, but she'd craved more. She was planning to get away more often once she'd retired. Already she'd been invited to spend a few days in the Lake District with Edith Warner, a friend who'd retired last year, and Gladys McNamara, another recently retired colleague, had invited her to spend a week with her in Connemara. She'd never been to Ireland before and was really looking forward to that. Maud and Prue always spent a week of the summer holidays in Scarborough, and for the last few years they'd taken Gladys with them. But this year she'd said, "I can't walk all that well, and I won't be able to keep up. I'd rather stay at home." She'd lost even more weight, and she needed a walking stick to get about. Prue was afraid she wouldn't be able to manage at home on her own, but she couldn't be persuaded to go with them. "I don't want to be a drag on you two." "I shall cook for us both every evening," Carrie had told them. And Connie said she'd come round during the day and take Gladys out if the weather was suitable. Usually the sisters celebrated family milestones with a tea party at home and made cakes and jellies. But Maud counted this an important birthday, and Archie had given her a taste for eating in the best hotels in the city. She'd asked his advice and booked a table at the Exchange Hotel for the family. "I must give her a present," Archie said to Marion when they received a formal invitation. "Prue was very pleased with that Peter Pan collar I made for her. Perhaps I should make another for Maud." "No," Marion said. "Don't take on any more work. We want to finish what we're committed to doing. I thought you wanted to leave as soon as possible." "I do, but Prue gets all the limelight and everybody overlooks Maud. I'd like to give her a piece of jewellery too, something special. Perhaps we could buy her one of those collars." Marion grimaced. "It wouldn't suit her. Prue has a thin neck, but Maud is quite plump, and her neck is getting thicker. If we bought one, it might be quite tight for her. Leave it to me. I'll get her something nice." "Not from Milner's. I don't want you to give him the trade." "All right, but he has the best jewellery in Liverpool." A week later, she brought a small leather box to show Archie. "I decided on a brooch for Maud. She doesn't wear much jewellery." "That's because she doesn't have much." Marion snapped open the box. "It's your design. The dragonfly mounted on a tiny spring so that it moves slightly with the wearer, and that makes the stones flash with light. This one has been beautifully made. 18-carat gold with diamonds, rubies and sapphires." "It's lovely, but if it's stolen property, I can't give it to Maud." Marion laughed. "I knew you'd say that. I bought it in a top-class jeweller's in Southport. Here's the name on the case. It's not one we've worked in. I kept the bill to show you." She unfolded it and held it out. Archie whistled through his teeth. "Quite expensive. We can afford it with our expense account from Rod." Archie thoroughly enjoyed Maud's birthday dinner and seeing his brothers George and Bob again. George lived in Preston, and so he saw little of him. By the time Connie's wedding anniversary came round, she and John had moved into their little house, a newly built semi-detached in an outer suburb. Carrie thought it could be made lovely, but at the moment it was sparsely furnished. John took Connie out for a celebratory meal on the Saturday night, and on Sunday all the family were invited round to see the new house and have a meal of salad with tinned salmon, tinned peaches and cream, and fancy cakes made by Prue. Chapter 24. One bright morning at the end of May, Marion stayed home to work on the Starbright accounts. Archie was feeling increasingly alarmed, but did what Marion asked of him. He picked up Bill Dainty and took him to Milner's shop. The alteration or removal of assay marks was almost completed, and they both wanted Bill to finish that off as soon as possible. Archie didn't like Gerard Milner any better now he knew Carrie had broken off all contact with him. Marion had lost patience over this and told him to forget it, put it behind him, and on no account ever mention it to Milner. Gerard Milner let them into the workroom. "Those stones Marion had recut. Did she tell you? I have 2 orders that will use almost all of them." This was one of those times when Archie could feel his fists clenching, and he had to keep a careful watch on what he said. 2 rich gentlemen who want to please their wives," he chortled. "And both customers have chosen which of your designs they want. They'll use up those stones very nicely." "One wants the necklace that is all diamonds." "Yes, and the other wants the necklace that has diamonds, sapphires, and river pearls, and not only the necklace, but matching earrings and a brooch too." "Yes, I've started on that one, made 6 inches of it." Archie took the centrepiece out of his workbox to show him, a lattice of platinum set with the precious stones. "Very nice. She'll like that. This customer is happy with your designs and sketches, but she's quite elderly, and has asked that the catch on the necklace be made larger, because her fingers have stiffened with rheumatism and she can't manage small things." "I've already made 2 catches." "That doesn't matter. I can use one some other time." "If the fastening is to be larger, I'll probably need to alter the design slightly in keeping with that. Otherwise it might look out of place." Archie riffled through the designs he'd made to find the one. "Yes, these are the large, heavy stones along the front, and then I've repeated the pattern, but gradually reduced the size towards the fastener. With a larger catch, the last 2 or 3 links on each side would look better, slightly larger." "Could you use more platinum instead?" "A thicker rope of platinum would be the easiest. But whether I use larger stones or more platinum, it would make it heavier, and most ladies don't like too much weight around their necks." "It would also make it more expensive," Milner said. "Perhaps I'd better consult the customer. She's already approved your design for the earrings, but she's not sure about the brooch and wants more time to think about that." "I haven't done anything about the brooch, so no problem there. I'll wait to hear from you. But I'll have to give some thought to a larger catch and how best to alter the necklace." "I'll phone her." "I'll work on the earrings today. What about the other necklace? Is that lady happy with the size of the catch?" "Yes, she's young and beautiful." Milner popped in and out of the workroom all day. "The lady doesn't want you to change the design of her necklace. Just make the platinum links a bit larger near the catch if you think it needs it." He seemed to be trying to appear interested in what Archie was doing. "To what you work as a master class in jewellery making," he told him. That sounded obsequious. He'd gone over the top with his praise. "I've done a great deal of this sort of thing," Archie grunted. By 3 o'clock, Bill had finished, and Archie sent him home for the day. Milner packed the work Bill had done into a box and cleaned up his workbench. "Marion will come in with me tomorrow," Archie said. "She'll want to check what's in the box against our paperwork and bill you for what we've done. Then she'll decide with you what you'll send and what she'll send to be assayed as new." He was sure now that Milner understood how he felt and was trying to disarm him by being friendly, but he was so obviously overdoing it. He was taking the same line as Marion. Nothing must interfere with the work they were doing. When Milner closed his shop, he brought Archie a cup of tea and said, "I've just been given a date for my annual audit. It's to be the 2nd of June. I won't want you in while they're here." End of CD 8. CD 9. By 7, Archie had finished the earrings, and they were both tired. "I've had enough. Let's give up now," he said, straightening his aching shoulders. "I need to give more thought to the catch on this necklace. A big one will look out of place, and it's got to be secure. I'll take it home and see what Marion thinks. I have to go to Chester with Bill tomorrow, so it might be a day or two before I come back to finish the job." "How about coming upstairs for a drink before you go home?" Archie hated all this pretense of friendliness, but as Marion wanted him to go along with it, he agreed. Milner was a good actor, but he could feel wariness in his manner, and he couldn't relax with him. He felt better by the time he was on his second bottle of beer. He thought Milner was trying to find out more about the other work Rod was involved in, but there was little he could tell him. He was just saying, "Rod talks to Marion on the radio telephone once in a while. He's fine, and so is his mother," when he was interrupted by the strident ringing of the doorbell. It stopped for a moment and then rang again. "Are you expecting somebody?" he asked. Milner was on his feet. "No, stay here. I'll see who it is." Archie looked at his watch. It was time he went home. Marion would be making dinner. He was reaching for his drink, meaning to finish it and go, when he heard voices and steps coming up the stairs. Milner came into the room and shot him a warning glance. There were 2 men on his heels. "Archie," he said, "these men are detectives. They want to ask a few questions." Archie's heart burst into overdrive. He felt the blood rush up his cheeks. Wasn't this what he'd been frightened might happen all along? His case of tools containing the half-made jewellery, set with those recut diamonds, was on the carpet at his feet. With his heel, he pushed it backwards under his armchair. "Then, I'll leave you to it, Gerard," he said, draining his glass and standing up. No, we don't want to disturb you," one of the detectives said. "We're just making a few routine inquiries. Perhaps you can help us too." They flashed their identity cards at him and introduced themselves, then asked who he was. Archie felt cornered. He couldn't think, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "A friend," Milner said, looking cool and collected, as though he hadn't a care in the world. "We were just having a quiet drink." Thank goodness Milner had tidied up the workroom below and locked away that box full of stolen goods, not to mention the materials they'd been working with. Had the detectives noticed Archie push the toolbox containing the necklaces and earrings under the chair? Was it really out of sight? He risked a glance, but still wasn't sure. "Do you have a business connection with Mr. Milner?" The detective was looking straight into his eyes. Archie felt like a rabbit caught in the headlights of a car. He wanted to say no, but dare he? "No," Milner said firmly. "He's just a friend, but he is another jeweller. That's how we came to know each other." "You retail jewellery somewhere else? You have a shop?" No," Archie managed. "I work for a business that manufactures the stuff." He was immediately filled with doubt. Should he have said that? What if they asked which business? He held his breath. The last thing he wanted was to mention South Africa. He wanted to go there and feel safe. "Archie's here on holiday," Milner volunteered, still without a vestige of nerves. "He went to work in America a couple of years ago." "Yes," Archie was sweating with relief. "That's right. I've lost touch with the market here." "Oh, I have relatives in America. What part are you from?" Archie gulped. He'd never set foot in America. What if he dropped himself in it by naming a city this man knew? But he couldn't think of any American city except New York, he said belatedly. Then, thinking he should add something to show he was familiar with the place, "Hometown of Franklin D. Roosevelt, 32nd President of the United States. He's a Democrat. Not hometown, I mean home city. Well, he was born there." They were all looking at him. He felt their surprise, saw concern on Milner's face. "Don't say any more," he cautioned himself. "You've overdone it already." After a moment's pause, the detective took some photographs from the file case he'd brought in. Then it won't help to show you these." He held them in front of Archie all the same. Archie guessed they would be of stolen property, but when he saw the top one, he gasped audibly and gave such a jerk of shock that he knocked them out of the detective's hand. Making no comment, the man stooped to pick them up and repositioned them in front of Archie's face. "This is a necklace, but it comes with a stand, so it can also be worn as a tiara," he said. It was their tiara. Archie was running with sweat. "Don't see many of those in America," he mumbled. Then the photos were spread out in front of Milner. "Do you handle used jewellery in your business?" he was asked. "Occasionally, yes, for repairs and remodelling, that sort of thing." "You don't sell anything that's second-hand?" "Well, not very often, and it would have to be something out of the ordinary, something very special." "These are very special pieces, and they were stolen some months ago. Please look closely and tell me if you've seen them. Have they been offered to you through your business?" Milner put on his spectacles and took the photos to one of his table lights. "They're made from 18-carat gold, large white diamonds, and pale blue Ceylon sapphires. 13 carats in all. This is a written description giving details of their cut and size." Archie couldn't believe how cool and collected Milner looked. He wished he was more like him. His mouth was as dry as a parrot cage. He reached for his glass, but it was empty. "No," Milner said. "I haven't seen these pieces. Nice stuff, though." "Yes, top of the market. Would it be possible to see round your premises?" Archie turned ramrod stiff against the cushions and couldn't get his breath. Milner shrugged. "Of course, if you want to, but there's nothing to see now. My staff lock everything away for the night before they leave." "Well," the detective stood up. "Just a glance round, if you wouldn't mind." Archie watched Milner lead them out of the room, undecided whether he should follow. Desperate to know what they would do, he rushed after them, belatedly. Milner was flicking lights on as he went. "The doors and windows are all shuttered and locked," he said, "and the more valuable pieces are locked away in safes, as advised by your security officer." "Quite right. It's as it should be." "How different it looks now the shop's closed," Archie said inanely. "It's the first time I've seen it like this." "Even the cleaners have gone now," Milner added. "There's really nothing to see." "No," the detectives agreed, though they were both staring round at the empty display cases. One indicated the main shop entrance. "We can't get out of this door now?" "It would be easier if you used my private entrance," Milner said, and led the way back upstairs towards it. Oh, thank God they were going. Archie was beginning to breathe normally again when they stopped outside the doors marked private. "Are these your workrooms?" "Yes." Milner unlocked the doors without being asked. He still looked innocent, but Archie was terrified and felt all his muscles tense. He'd been melting gold, and a blast of warmer air met them. "I've been doing a few repairs today," Milner said easily, "but everything's been locked away here too." There was nothing to be seen. "Thank you, sir. the older detective said as they prepared to leave. He took some sheets of paper from the case he carried. "Here is our monthly list." Gerard smiled and waved it at them. "I'll keep an eye open for this stuff," he said. "And one for you, sir, just in case. Sorry to have disturbed you for a routine inquiry." Archie stuffed the list into his pocket and didn't breathe again until he heard the detectives clattering down the outside staircase. The blast of cold night air felt wonderful on his face. "Oh, my God," he whispered. "They're on to us." Milner pushed him inside and slammed the door. "You fool! You bloody fool!" he spat, and rushed back to his sitting room, where he gulped down the beer that remained in his glass. Archie followed and retrieved his toolbox from under the chair. Milner was glowering at him. He'd gone white, and his air of bonhomie had disappeared. "Why did you have to spout all that drivel about Roosevelt? It made you look as guilty as hell. Made us both look guilty." Archie could feel his hackles rising. He'd done his best. "I don't know. I tried to make it seem as though I really knew about New York, lived there." Milner's face no longer hid the fear and cold disdain he felt for him. "You don't know when to keep your mouth shut. You told them a made-up story, a pack of lies. It was perfectly obvious. Roosevelt has just announced he'll run for a second term, and we all read that stuff about him in the newspapers yesterday. They were watching us after that. What a crass, stupid fool you are." "You're blaming me." Archie could no longer control himself. With all the venom he'd held back for days, he swung a right to Milner's face, then followed it up with more punches to his head and body. He straightened up to get his breath and saw that Milner had slumped to the floor. He picked up his toolbox and let himself out. His hands were shaking as he unlocked his car. He was glad he'd done that. It evened the score. He'd given the man what he deserved, done what he'd been aching to do since he'd heard how Milner had treated Carrie. Chapter 25. "You're late," Marion said when he reached home. "I'm afraid the dinner might be overcooked." When she saw his face, she added, "Has something happened?" "Yes. The police are onto us. We have to get out now, straight away. We can't carry on like this." He started to recount what had happened, but she led the way to the kitchen, where he was met by savoury scents. "We need to eat now, or it'll be spoiled. Fish pie with new carrots and spinach." She began to dish up. The last thing Archie wanted was food. He drank 2 glasses of cold water at the kitchen sink before he could go on. "Marion, stop and listen to me. This is important. We need to get out of the country before the balloon goes up. The police came and searched Milner's shop. I was having a beer with him." "Did they have a search warrant?" "No." "Did Milner refuse to let them look round?" "No, he was surprisingly relaxed." "Sorry." She was on the way to the dining room, carrying their plates. "I can't concentrate on an empty stomach. Come and eat." Milner let them see whatever they wanted, even into his workrooms, but we'd cleared everything away. "If they saw nothing incriminating, there's no immediate crisis." "Yes, there is." Archie's stomach was churning. He couldn't eat. "After this, my name will be on police files, and I'll be linked to Gerard Milner. Any evidence against him would incriminate me." "Not necessarily. They have to have proof. Archie, pull yourself together. You've got to calm down." "That's the trouble. I was a bag of nerves. Milner said I looked as guilty as hell, that I said too much, gave the game away." "Well, that is worrying," she said. "But we'll soon be able to sever our connection with Milner. I'll work out his bill tomorrow, and once he pays up, that's that." "But the police? That won't stop them." "They have to have evidence." "I know, but was Milner worried?" "Yes, of course. But he acted as though he was remarkably cool." "There you are, then. You worry too much, Archie. I'll give him a ring and see what he thinks. She stood up. "You eat that dinner I made for you. Your nerves are always on edge when you don't eat." Archie did his best to clear his plate. It was some time before Marion came back, and she was frowning. "Milner says it was a routine visit. They were giving out a new stolen property list." "Yes, they gave me one." He pulled it out of his jacket pocket and pushed it towards her. "He says you almost dropped him in it, said all the wrong things instead of keeping your mouth shut. And as soon as the police had gone, you went berserk, jumped on him like a wild animal and gave him a bloody nose. He thinks you're not safe to let out on your own." "Good. I hope I hurt him. The fellow's despicable. I can't cope with him." "Archie, he's doing his best. He sees no immediate urgency and is hopeful there never will be. But we can't go in for a while. He told you, didn't he?" "Oh, yes, I forgot. He's expecting the audit team and doesn't want us there at the same time." "I should think not, though Carrie said she might not be going this year." "Milner suggested we work at night, but I told him no. We're both tired. We've been slogging away for months, and you can't be expected to do your best work in the middle of the night. We still have another 3 days' work at Edward Jones in Southport, so we'll do that first. Apart from that, there are a few jewellers who haven't yet paid up, and odds and ends of work to finish off." Archie was relieved. "That puts us off facing Milner for a few days. Jones has a good workshop. Perhaps I can do some of that work there." "It depends on how quickly we finish the work he has for us." Marion was frowning. "I don't like you carrying those necklaces about in your toolbox. Bill Dainty will be with us, but it'll be the last place we have to take him." She was studying the police list. "This is interesting reading. That tiara is not the only thing we've worked on. There's a signet ring here, and a watch chain you melted down." "There are pages of the stuff." "Of course, we're encouraging thieves to steal more by helping them get a good price for it. I'll have another look at this later. I have treacle tart to follow. I know it's your favourite." Archie didn't answer. "You live on your nerves, that's your problem. We won't have to stay much longer. Once we get the money out of these last few jewellers, we'll pack up and go." "But what about those necklaces I'm doing for Milner?" "Well, you'll have to finish those first, of course." The following week, they collected Bill and drove out to Southport. Archie found there was more than enough work waiting for them at Edward Jones's shop. All three of them set to and worked hard, but Archie could see he wouldn't have time to do anything else. Facing Milner again was a weight hanging over him. On their last day, Marion took them out for a decent lunch. She made out Jones's bill, checked over the paperwork with him, and collected payment before they left that afternoon. Archie drove back to Liverpool, afraid that Bill was going to cause an embarrassing scene, though he must know their need of him was almost over. As they approached the street where Bill lived, Marion half turned in her seat and said firmly, "That completes all the work we have for you, Bill. We won't need your services any longer. Thank you for all the help you've given us. Your workmanship is good, and you work hard." Archie heard his sudden intake of breath. "Is that it?" He sounded quite shocked. "You aren't giving me much notice." "I've worked out what we owe you," Marion said briskly, "and I've added an extra week's pay in lieu of notice." She handed him an envelope. Archie stopped the car at the end of the road. Bill was slow to get out, and his face was truculent. "It's goodbye, then," he said, and slammed the door without another word. "I hope that's the last we hear of him." Marion's smile was a little grim. "I kept telling you not to worry about him bringing trouble to our door. It was the right thing to keep him working, because once you've done these jobs for Milner, we're about finished. Just payments to collect and odds and ends to clear up." "I'm not looking forward to facing Milner," Archie said, but he could see that Marion was determined he would. "When will that be?" Milner had given them a lot of work, and Archie would be well paid for this last job. "I'll give him a ring tomorrow. It has to be done, but if all goes well, we can pack and say goodbye to your family without much hanging about. We could bring our passage home forward by 1 week. What do you say to that?" "Marvellous." Archie was pleased. "I reckon 4 days to do what Milner wants. I'm going to invite Kerry out to stay with us when she can tear herself away from her job." "Of course," Marion said. "She'll love it, and you'll enjoy seeing her again." Archie groaned. He was getting cold feet again. "Oh, I don't know how I can face Milner after that showdown. I dread going near his shop. I hate him, and I think he feels the same about me." They spent all evening arguing the pros and cons. Marion had never looked more determined. "I want you to finish the bespoke work you're doing for him. While those stones are loose, it doesn't take a big stretch of the imagination to link them to the tiara. It makes it safer for us all to get them made up and being worn by one of Milner's clients." Archie shook his head. "I can see the sense of that, but I can't do it. Gerard Milner and I know where we stand with each other. We've let our feelings show." "Come on, Archie. I'll stay with you. Be the oil on troubled waters. There'll be no more fighting." "He won't expect to see me again." "Then he'll be relieved when you turn up. He wants those necklaces finished more than anything else. We'll none of us get paid until they're done." Marion had an inner core of steel. Archie had seen her in action and knew that he'd give in to her. It was what he always did, what everybody did. "You know it makes sense," she said. "Come upstairs now and let's get the job out on your workbench to see what still needs to be done. Perhaps there's more you can do here at home, or perhaps I can help you." Marion got everything out of his case and studied the designs as well as his work in progress. "How much bigger is this catch to be?" Archie was enlarging the measurements on his diagram, almost without realizing it. "I can make the catch for a start," she told him. "I don't want to sit there idle while you work. We've got to get this whole project finished now." That made Archie feel at fault that his work wasn't yet completed. "You've got the Starbright paperwork to finish, haven't you?" "I shall take it with me. I can do it there if I have to." She smiled and repacked his case for him. "Cheer up, Archie. We're on the last lap now. Let's have a nightcap and forget about our problems for tonight." Such was Marion's power that he did what she said, and afterwards he slept well. Carrie was working at her desk that afternoon when her internal phone buzzed. She picked it up, and a voice said, "Mavis Cullimore here." Mavis was Leonard Groves' new secretary. "He wants you to come up now for your monthly discussion." Right, I'm on my way." Carrie had been expecting this summons and had prepared some questions she needed to ask. Now that she knew Mr. Groves better, she quite enjoyed his monthly sessions, which could last for the best part of an hour. She knew she was his first articled clerk, and he took his responsibilities towards her seriously. He was kind and talked her through what she was supposed to know by this time in her training, trying to be her tutor, guide, mentor and counsellor rolled into one. When she reached his office, Miss Cullimore said, "I'm afraid he's on the phone at the moment." She rolled a sheet of paper out of her typewriter. "This is the timetable of the work coming due. Would you like to see it?" Carrie picked it up. "Well, I have to go where I'm sent, but it's good to know what's coming up." The name G.E. Milner, jeweller, jumped out at her. Only last night she'd been thinking about this. She was over Gerard Milner now, but she didn't fancy going to his shop to do his audit again this year. Mr. Groves opened the door of his office. "Will you organise some tea, please, Miss Cullimore?" He smiled at Carrie. "You'll have a cup, Caroline, won't you? Come on in." "Yes, please, sir." He'd not offered her tea before New Year's Day. He was more relaxed with her now. "I've typed up the list of clients with visits falling due now," Miss Cullimore said, offering it to him. He sat down behind his desk, studying it. He looked over his glasses at Carrie. "You won't be going to Milner's this year," he said. "Mr. Hetherington said he fixated on you last time. We can't have you bothered by that sort of thing. It's embarrassing all round, causes unnecessary difficulties. I see the Grey Goat Brewery need a team to draw up their accounts at about the same time. You can go there. Now, Caroline, your lectures are finished for the summer, but what have you learned from your correspondence course?" Tim Redwood walked past the dazzling display of jewellery in G.E. Milner's jewellery shop in Lord Street, feeling full of suspicion. As John Bradshaw, their team leader, led the way upstairs to the office, the shop girls smiled at the team of 4 following behind him. Milner leapt to his feet to shake John's hand and came down the line to shake Tim's. He wore a waistcoat with a gold pocket watch and a chain across his stomach, just like Uncle Jeremy. Hadn't he heard of wristwatches? Tim thought him a flashy fellow, with his little moustache and formal suit, and he was old, very old for what he'd tried to do to Carrie. Tim knew she'd quietly put him out of her life afterwards, but she'd not escaped unscathed. She wouldn't let another man near her now. Whatever could she have seen in him? Tim found him repulsive and longed to pay him back for what he'd done. He knew that John was aware of what had happened between them, and he too would like to even the score if he could. They both knew they should be totally objective and free from prejudice when working on Milner's books, but in the past they'd suspected the accounts were not telling the whole story. They all knew Milner could not avoid having an audit. His business was a limited company that had by law to lodge audited annual accounts with Companies House. His company taxes and his personal income tax were based on those figures. Neither could he just change his firm of auditors, as that would immediately cause them to question why he'd done it and possibly raise their suspicions. Before the visit, John had called the team into his office and told them he thought Gerard Milner a wily fellow. "We've been doing his audit for years, and though we've suspected that all is not what it seems, we've been unable to put our finger on anything wrong. I think he may have had some training in accounting. He certainly knows all the tricks of the trade. His presentation of the accounts makes them look very satisfactory. Everything is shown in the most favourable light." "They all do that," Robbie said. "Yes, we must expect it," John went on. "But Milner employs an accountant to draw up his figures, and I think they go through them with a fine-tooth comb before we do the audit. He's confident we'll pass them. He believes they're cast iron. I predict that this year he'll have made a good profit, the top end for what would be expected in his trade. On our last audit, he'd increased his previous year's retained profit and also his liabilities. But is he hiding something? Is he switching transactions either in or out of the current year? Is he showing all his expenses? Or is he selling goods that are not shown in his stock? Keep your eyes open for things like that. I'm going to question everything, and I want you to do that too. If there's anything doubtful, we're going to ask why it's been done that way and keep on asking." Tim had been taught that simplicity of presentation was almost as important as accuracy, and that the accounts should show not only the calculation of profit or loss, but how those results had been achieved. It was the way Milner did this that had caused doubts at previous audits. Also, the balance sheet should be presented so that it could be understood by people without a knowledge of accounting. The manager of any company being audited would be interested in the story the figures were telling, rather than the figures themselves. As usual, Tim was asked to start by checking the goods held in the stockroom, as well as those displayed for sale. Everything Milner bought went into stock, and if when they checked it was not there, the proceeds of the sale must be in his records. It took Tim and Frank Dawes, his fellow auditor, the best part of 2 days to get through that and find it correct, while Robbie and John started on the ledgers. Tim was then given the job of checking that Milner's expenses for running the business for the year were correct. With his 5 shops in the suburbs, they were many and complicated, but Tim was used to this sort of work now. He had only 20 minutes or so to glance through them before it was time to go home, but he saw that Milner's accounts were kept in an exemplary fashion. They were neat and clearly written. When he left the shop that evening, Tim was convinced that Gerard Milner was invincible. No problem would be found in his annual audit. It was Sunday, and Archie and Marion were going to work. Gerard Milner had decided to stay in Liverpool over the weekend so that they could work on the bespoke necklaces. They all wanted that done as soon as possible. The shop would be closed. There would be no interruptions. Archie stood 2 steps behind Marion as they waited at Milner's private entrance. When he opened the door, Archie couldn't look him in the face. Marion was doing her best to look relaxed. Archie was rigidly on guard and sensed the huge wall of tension between himself and Milner. Marion started work on the larger clasp for his necklace and acted as his assistant all day. They saw less of Milner than they had on previous occasions, and when he did come to the workroom, his face was grim, and he spoke only to Marion. They worked on later than usual, and Archie made substantial progress. "Tonight we'll have dinner before going home," Marion said. "Oh, neither of us has the energy to start cooking now. Let's see if we can get a table at the Adelphi." She went off to use Milner's phone. Archie felt exhausted and was surprised at how much energy Marion still had and how quickly she was able to shut off from work. She was sparklingly sociable and happy once they were eating, and he was able to relax and enjoy it. They worked in the same way over the next 2 days, because the audit team were checking the stock in Milner's other branches. Archie felt he'd never worked harder, but with Marion's help, he finished the bespoke work in 3 days. At last it was over. "You've done an excellent job," Marion said. "You should be proud of it. This is top-class jewellery, and it bears no resemblance to that tiara." She locked it into his workbox. "But we aren't going to hand it over until Milner pays up. I'll make out his final bill and come back to see him in a day or 2. "I'm just thankful I don't have to come here again," Archie said. "Milner gives me the creeps." "Rod was friendly with him," Marion pulled a face. "But I can't say I took to him. I'll not be sorry to say goodbye." "He was our biggest customer," Archie said, "and he owes us a lot of money now." "I'll get it," Marion smiled at him. "You can depend on that." Marion made out the final bills for the Starbright work, and on Wednesday and Thursday, Archie drove her round the shops, where they still had odd jobs to finish off and those who'd not yet paid. They covered a large area in Cheshire and Lancashire, and Archie enjoyed it. "It feels like a mopping-up exercise," he said. On Friday morning, Archie cooked sausages as well as eggs and bacon for breakfast. They were both on a high now the end was so near. He'd started to pack his belongings. "I'm going to see Gerard Milner this morning," Marion said. "And I know you don't want to come with me. Why don't you go to that shop in Ormskirk? Puller's it's called. I think we left 3 or 4 rings needing to be done there." "Fine by me," Archie said. "You'll get through the work easily in a day. I've made the bill out ready, and if you can collect the money, we can tie up our account with him too. That really will mark the end of our work here." Archie was still half expecting trouble from Milner. He knew he planned to pay in cash, and he found it hard to believe that things would go as smoothly as Marion assumed. What if Milner doesn't have enough money? There's no reason to suppose he won't. He has plenty of cash customers, and he's known this bill was coming for some time. Anyway, I won't give him the bespoke jewellery until he does. "I feel we're almost on our way," Archie said, pushing his fears behind him. "Next Thursday's ship is the Arundel Castle, yes?" Yes, I've changed our booking. The cabin is not as good as the one I originally booked, but we're getting out a week earlier. They say the tickets are in the post. Archie rubbed his hands together and smiled with satisfaction. That same Friday, Tim was still checking the figures for the expenses that Milner had incurred in running his business. Wages and salaries were easily the largest figure. He had a big staff, and they were all listed on his payroll. In his office, Milner employed an accountant and several bookkeepers, a secretary and a typist. He had shop managers and many shop assistants, even a security guard come driver. Mostly they worked full-time, except for the cleaners and some of the shop assistants. He could find no fault with the figures. He checked and rechecked any additions or percentages. Everything was correct, and his documents were meticulously neat. He'd stared at them for so long, he could almost see the numbers when he closed his eyes. Tim had not seen Carrie over the last few days because she was working in the Grey Goat Brewery. But tomorrow was Saturday and her last day there. He wanted to remind her of their usual arrangement, that she was expected for lunch, and he wanted them to spend the rest of the day together. Though Uncle Jeremy had had a phone installed in the Redwoods home to make it easier for Tim to keep in touch with his mother, Carrie's family didn't have one, and that meant he needed to ring her while she was at work. He was looking up the number of the Grey Goat Brewery when the phone rang. It was Carrie, wanting to speak to him for the same reason. That settled, Tim put the phone down and returned to his figures. But his mind was on Carrie. He'd known her for a long time now, and she meant more to him with each month that passed. Suddenly, he remembered an incident from their past, and Milner's expenses gave it a new importance. He straightened up, with his heart beating faster. Around him, the rest of his team were locking their work away for the night and preparing to go home. "Good night, Tim," John said to him as he left. "No need to work overtime." Robbie slapped his back as he passed his desk. Tim sat, almost paralysed, remembering how some months ago he'd been walking across town with Carrie on the way to the Odeon when she'd spotted her father's car. He'd met her father for the first time with his lady friend, whom Carrie thoroughly approved of and was hoping he'd marry. Hadn't Carrie asked them if they'd been working at Milner's? The car was certainly parked in a convenient spot for his shop. But according to Milner's records, he employed all his staff permanently. There was no figure for any temporary staff, no figure for staff employed on contract. Tim could feel excitement beginning to fizz in his stomach. If he was right, and Milner had employed Carrie's relatives, he'd come across something that ought to be shown in his records. He checked again, but it wasn't there. He felt a moment of triumph, then slowly began to clear his desk for the night and lock up the small office given over to the team. The shop assistants were busy dismantling the displays of stock in the glass cases and putting everything of value into the safes for the night. The main shop door had already been locked, and the manager had to be found to let him out. Tim was in a daze. What could all this mean? What excited him most was that he seemed to have come across what John had told them all to search for. Had he found a means to pay Milner back for the passes he'd made at Carrie? And at the same time, had he helped Atherton and Groves to get an honest view of what Milner was putting through his business? If so, it seemed too good to be true. Uncle Jeremy had been so good to him and his mother, and it would also show that he wasn't slacking during the time he was at work. He'd pored over Milner's accounts for so long that he knew without looking again that the jeweller had made a good profit for the year. If he'd shown a higher figure for expenses, it would have reduced that. But he'd probably still have made a good profit, so why hide what he'd spent on temporary labour? It didn't make any sense, but it cast suspicion on all his figures. He would have his reason, and it surely had to be fraud of some sort. Tim's mind was in turmoil all that evening and for half the night. Archie was anticipating a quiet day as he set off to the small shop in Ormskirk to finish the last of the work Rod had arranged for them. When he arrived, the owner wasn't exactly pleased to see him. "I thought you'd have come back to finish off weeks ago," he said. "It's not safe to keep stuff like this on the premises." "Yes, I'm sorry. I think we took on too much work, but I'll finish it off today." "I've done some of it myself in quiet moments. There are just 2 rings left. I've even sold that heavy bangle you worked on. Do you remember that?" Archie couldn't. "Shall I do those rings now?" "You might as well since you're here, though the assay marker's almost worn away on one." "I've brought the bill, but as you've done some of the work yourself, it'll have to be reduced." Archie thought it hardly mattered whether Starbright was paid or not, because compared with all they'd earned elsewhere, this was peanuts. "I'll start on the rings if you'll figure out what is a fair amount to reduce the bill by for the work you've done." "Right. Would you like a cup of tea before we start?" "Yes, thank you." The owner paid in cash. They shook hands and parted on good terms just before midday. Archie was hungry but full of satisfaction. It was all over at last. He and Marion could now go back to Joburg. They had succeeded in doing what they'd set out to do. What a fool he'd been to worry about being caught. Marion had been right when she'd said they were safe enough. He was passing a small cafe and caught the savoury scents as the door opened. On the spur of the moment he went in and had beef and ale pie, followed by rice pudding. He set off to drive home, hoping Marion had managed to collect the large sum of money that Milner owed them. With that, and what Rod had already paid them, they'd be set up for life, and there'd be no need ever to break the law again. Archie felt triumphant. All they had to do was pack up the house and get down to Southampton by next Thursday to catch the mailboat to Cape Town. They were really going to enjoy themselves on the voyage. As Archie edged the car up the drive, he was surprised to see a cabin trunk and several suitcases piled in the porch. His first thought was that they'd had an unexpected visitor. Had Rod come back? He couldn't help but notice the colourful labels on the luggage. Cunard Line, Flagship RMS Queen Mary. He got out of the car and took a closer look, straightening out a smaller label tied to the handle of one of the cases. Miss Marion Collard. Voyage Liverpool to New York on... Wasn't that today's date? Archie stood stock still, shocked to the core. There must be some mistake. He took another look at the label. It told him which deck her first-class cabin was on, and also the number. "No!" he gasped aloud. "No!" The future he was expecting had exploded in smithereens. He could hardly get his key into the lock, but at last he turned it and threw the front door open. "Marion!" he cried out. "Marion!" She was coming slowly downstairs wearing her outdoor coat. There was a look of shocked surprise on her face. I didn't expect you back. Not yet." "What are you doing? All your cases outside. Why?" She was biting her lip. "Archie, I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "I don't understand. What you doing? You're not going to New York." He'd never seen Marion so put out. I'm sorry. Yes. But we're sailing to Cape Town on Thursday. You booked it. You can't... I am. I'm sorry." "When will you be back?" "Archie, I'm not coming back. You weren't supposed to know I was going to New York." That seemed to end everything he'd hoped for. "But why?" "You know I sold my house in Joburg." "Yes, but you're going to live with me." He put his arms out to pull her close, but she stepped away from him. "We're engaged. We'll be married as and when you like." "No, I don't want to get married. I've tried it and it was a bad experience. It would be different with me. Quite different. Archie was still convinced of that. If he could persuade her, all would be well. I'll come to New York with you if that's what you want. We'll have a holiday in America first. No, I said no. He shook his head in despair. Why not? You seemed happy with me. I thought you were. Archie, you were a nervous wreck. You needed a lot of encouragement to carry on. She wouldn't even meet his eyes now. Look, I'm afraid I lied when I said Graham died of cancer. He was a rotter. I walked out on him, but we're still married. Oh. Archie was gulping down a deep sense of shock. Nothing was as he'd supposed. Couldn't you get a divorce? She was shaking her head. I've not seen Graham for years. I've lost touch with him. She'd lied. This must mean that she didn't want to marry him, that she never had and never would. She'd pretended to love him just to keep him here at work. And she'd been great in bed. Had she slept with him every night just so that he would finish what Rod had set up? He felt sick. He heard a car horn blare outside. That'll be my taxi, Marion said, moving to the hall mirror to put her hat on. I have to go. He could feel anger stirring within him. You were going to leave without even saying goodbye. She was biting her lip. I've left a letter for you on the mantelpiece. The taxi sounded its horn again. Archie was fighting back tears. I love you. Please don't end it like this. She opened the front door and waved to the driver. I have to go. The ship sails at 6 on the tide. You won't be alone in New York, will you? His voice was bitter. Who have you arranged to meet? The suitcases had gone from the porch. Marion turned to Archie. Do you remember Eddie Jurgens? He looked after me when I went to Amsterdam. He was Dutch. Originally, but he's an American now. She stretched up to kiss his cheek. Goodbye, Archie. You won't tell anyone where I've gone, will you? The door slammed behind her, and he heard the taxi drive away. He stood stock still in the hall for 5 minutes, then groped his way to an armchair in the sitting room and sat staring at the blue envelope propped up on the mantelpiece. It could only confirm the bad news. The clock on the mantelpiece struck 6 o'clock, and Archie thought of the Queen Mary edging her way off her moorings at the Prince's Landing stage and sailing down the Mersey. He got up and poured himself a double whiskey, then tore open the blue envelope. Marion's familiar scrawl told him little more than he already knew. She enclosed a cheque made out to him and added a postscript. Your agreement with Rod was that he'd pay your fare back to Joburg. It was generously more than that, but... Archie recoiled. Did this mean she'd lied about booking their return passages for Thursday? Certainly no tickets had arrived. It confirmed his loss and brought tears to his eyes. He ought to find the Union Castle brochure and ring up to check, but without Marion he felt lost. He didn't know what he was going to do. Instead of going upstairs to the room she'd used as an office, he poured himself more whiskey and went back to his chair. All his expectations, all his hopes were crushed. He'd trusted Marion and she'd let him down. He felt she'd betrayed him. He woke up at 2 a.m, feeling cold and stiff, and told himself he was stupid to sleep in a chair when he could be in bed. He found the energy to climb up to his bedroom. The bed had not been made. Marion had taken over that job some time ago. She could whisk through domestic chores in minutes. It made his loss seem more acute. He took off his shoes and got under the blankets, feeling too cold and miserable to undress. As he'd forgotten to draw the curtains, He woke to find the morning sun streaming into his room. It was nearly 10 o'clock. He felt like a ship without a rudder. He needed to go back to Joburg, but without Marion it wouldn't be the same. He must get up. His mouth was dry, and he needed a cup of tea. He'd put his feet on the floor and was sitting on the edge of the bed when the phone began to ring in the hall below. He ignored it. Eventually, it stopped, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Moments later, it started to ring again. He padded downstairs in his stockinged feet and lifted the receiver. "Hello?" "Gerard Milner here. Can I speak to Marion Collard?" Archie froze. She's not here." "Is that you, Archie? I need to speak to her urgently. When will she be back?" "I don't know." "Well, you must have some idea." His voice was thick with impatience. "Will she be back this afternoon?" "No. She's gone." "What do you mean, gone? Where to?" Archie almost said New York, but remembered in time that she'd asked him not to tell anyone. "I don't think she'll be coming back here." "What? I paid her for the work you and Dainty did, and she agreed to give me that bespoke jewellery you made for me once I'd done that, but she didn't. She said it had been left in your toolbox by mistake and you'd gone off to Ormskirk with it. Can you bring it to the shop? I'm expecting one of the clients it was made for to come in this afternoon." Archie groped for the hall chair and sank down onto it. He was gripped by a new fear. "Yes," he managed. "I'll look for it and bring it in." He had to sit still for a few minutes before his head stopped spinning. Had Marion taken that jewellery with her to New York? His gut feeling told him she had. She'd been planning this for months. She'd lied to him over and over just to keep him here. She'd never meant to share the spoils with him or had the slightest intention of marrying him. When he felt steadier on his feet, he went out to the car to look in his workbox. The tools were there just as he'd left them, but as he expected, the jewellery he'd made was not. He went back indoors and flung himself into the armchair. He truly felt in love with Marion. He'd believed they'd spend the rest of their lives together. He'd trusted her, but it had all been an act to get what she wanted. She'd taken them all in. He felt engulfed in disappointment, dense, black, and paralysing. He heard the phone ringing again and guessed it would be Milner. He knew he'd keep on until he answered it. He picked up the receiver and told him that he couldn't find the jewellery. It was not in his toolbox. Milner let out a string of swear words. "The bitch!" he ranted. "She's an out-and-out thief. Why, I didn't think she was that sort of person." "She took us all in," Archie said, and put the phone down. Milner sounded as desperate as he himself felt, but he had no sympathy for him. It was another hour before he slowly climbed the stairs to the bedroom they'd used as an office and workroom. He sat at the desk Marion had used to do the Starbright accounts and methodically pulled out each drawer in turn, looking for them. There was no sign of them and no trace of the bank books and checkbooks she'd used. He had to assume she'd drawn out all the money that was supposed to belong to Rod, that she'd cheated on him too. Chapter 26. By Saturday morning, Tim was full of doubt. Was his memory playing tricks on him? Had he missed an entry for temporary staff? When he reached the shop and sat down at the desk, the first thing he did was to riffle through Milner's payroll records. He was right. There was no indication that Milner ever employed any temporary staff. But had Carrie's father really said he'd been working there on the night they'd met? Was he right about the date? Carrie would know, and he couldn't wait to ask her. He went home at lunchtime, more excited than ever. As she was working in the dock area, she couldn't catch their usual tram and had agreed to come straight to his home. She was 10 minutes behind him, and he waited, full of impatience and heady with hope. He rushed to the door when she rang the bell and could hardly get his words out to ask, "Did your father say he was working at Milner's shop? Do you remember? We saw him that Wednesday night when we went to the Odeon straight from the office." What's all this about?" Carrie asked. "I think I found a hole in Milner's records. It could stop his accounts being signed off as correct." "What sort of a hole?" "I believe he's hiding expenses. There's no record of payments to temporary staff. Didn't you ask your father if he was working at Milner's and he said yes?" "He did," Carrie confirmed, and laughed because since then she'd come to understand what he did. He designs jewellery for him." "Yes, but he did say he'd been working for him that evening." "I think he did, yes. Wouldn't it be marvellous if you really... And you said you'd seen his car parked there before, so he'd probably worked there on other evenings too." "Yes, I do remember." Carrie's face puckered in thought. "Dad's a marvellous designer. That Peter Pan collar is one of his. A huge success for him." "I know." Tim caught at her hand. "But did he do temporary work for Milner?" "Oh, gosh, yes. I think he and Marion do that in other jewellers' shops too." "Milner's shop would have been closed at that time of night." "Yes, but it wouldn't need to be open, not to discuss designs." Carrie was frowning. "When Dad first came home from South Africa, he was a bit cagey about how he was earning his living. Prue and Maud used to talk about it and kept asking him if he was surviving on fresh air." Tim mused on that. Designing jewellery is a big thing. Perhaps he didn't want to boast about earning a living that way until he knew he could sell his designs. He'd have to find a market for them, wouldn't he? "Tim," she took hold of his arm, "could Dad be working for Milner on a contract basis? Wouldn't that be more likely?" "I thought of that too, but his accounts show nothing for contractual work either. I need to be quite certain about this. I don't want to get John involved unless I'm right." "Hello, Caroline. You're late today." Tim's mother came out of the kitchen. "What are you two dawdling in the hall for? Come on, your lunch will be getting cold." "Carrie," Tim held on to her, "you have to ask him. I need to know exactly what work he did for Milner and the dates on which he did it. And I need to know urgently." That afternoon, Carrie and Tim talked non-stop about Milner's business records, and though they tried to settle down to study, they found it impossible. "Have you got a calendar?" Carrie asked. "We could try and pinpoint the day we saw my father walking to his car. I don't suppose he'll remember." "I don't have a calendar for last year, but I think it was in October." "Hang on, I tore a page out of last year's diary that shows this year as well as last. It should be here in my handbag. Yes, look. It must have been Wednesday, the 16th of October. "Goody." Tim was all smiles. "Why don't you ring your father and ask if we can come and see him?" Carrie was as eager as Tim was to settle this, but the phone rang and rang until the operator's voice cut in to suggest she try again later. She put the receiver down. "He's always there on a Saturday," she said. "Marion goes into town by herself." "I said nothing in the office this morning," Tim said. "And I ought to tell John about this as soon as I can. He's my team leader and needs to know. I'll give him a ring, and if he's in, we could go and see him instead." "Let me try Dad again first," Carrie said. "We really need to get him to confirm that he did work for Milner. He likes me to get in touch on a Saturday because he's by himself." Again, the phone rang for a long time, and she was about to put it down when she heard it being lifted, and a voice croaked, "Hello?" "Is that you, Dad?" "Yes, Carrie." "Can Tim and I come round to see you? There's something we need to ask." There was such a long pause that she added, "Are you all right? Your voice sounds funny." Another long pause, and he grunted, "Yes,
Yes, come.
Has something happened? She asked, but he'd put the phone down. What's the matter? Tim asked her. I don't know, but let's get round there. Dad sounded quite strange. They had to ring the doorbell twice. Archie was a long time coming, and when he did, Carrie was shocked. He hadn't shaved, and he looked dishevelled. There were beads of perspiration on his forehead. Dad, what's happened? She could see into the sitting room. It no longer looked neat and tidy.
Come in here.
He took them into the dining room, where an easy chair had been pulled up in front of the gas fire, which was full on. The temperature was like that of a greenhouse on this summer afternoon. Oh, it's very hot in here, Dad. Can I turn it off? Tell me what's happened.
Marion isn't going to marry me after all. It's all over. I'm a bit upset.
She stared at him, shocked. Very upset, I'd say. Oh, I'm sorry, Dad. I liked her. Carrie wanted to know why, but it wasn't the sort of thing she could ask her father. What we want to talk to you about, Tim said, is the work you did for Milner. Carrie saw Archie's head jerk up, and he stared at them with glassy horror. Tim hastened to tell him about auditing Milner's accounts and finding what he thought was an omission. I understand that last year you did some design work for him, yes? Archie nodded vaguely. Did he give you a contract, or were you employed on a temporary basis? Archie continued to stare at them.
I don't know, he mumbled. Marion arranged all that.
But you did work for him, Dad. If we are to catch him out, we need to be sure about that.
Yes, he admitted.
He looked half-dazed and pushed his fingers through his hair. It hadn't been combed this morning. Did Marion work for him too? She asked. He nodded. Anybody else?
Yes, but forget about him.
Why? We need to be clear about who was working for Milner.
Bill is in trouble already, his own worst enemy. I can't make matters worse for him. I suppose I'm sorry for him.
All right. When did Marion go, Dad? I don't think you're looking after yourself as you should. You aren't managing without her, are you? What do you want to do?
I don't know.
Carrie could see his mouth was dry and crusted. Have you eaten today? Shall I make a cup of tea? Tim asked. I think it would be better if I took you home to Prue. She'll look after you. Why don't you pack a bag? Can you drive us there?
Prue has no room for me.
You can sleep in Maud's room. She's gone to stay with a friend in Ireland. I helped Prue make up a bed clean yesterday.
I'll be all right here.
No, I don't want to leave you by yourself. Let's put some overnight things into a bag and go. You can come back in a day or two when you feel better. The three of them went upstairs to his bedroom. Carrie screwed up her nose at the unmade bed and the general mess. The doors of the other rooms were open, and she could see chaos in the one he'd used as an office, with drawers left open and papers strewn about. Can you reach an overnight bag down, Dad? She asked, indicating the luggage piled on top of the wardrobe. As he did so, a large leather jewellery case crashed to the floor with it and opened to show its satin interior. Oh! Archie snatched it up, clicked it shut, and put it back. His face had gone paper white. What was that?
Just an old jewellery case.
Tim opened the overnight bag on the bed. Can you get your shaving tackle and toothbrush? He asked, and steered Archie towards the bathroom. Carrie opened the drawers in the tall boy and found plenty of freshly laundered clothes, all neatly folded. She packed a generous amount of what she thought he'd need. She was concerned about her father. He seemed quite switched off. Before leaving, she looked into the kitchen. It seemed that ingredients for a meal had been left out on the table for him to cook. She moved some of them to the refrigerator and marvelled anew at the latest kitchen equipment. Tim locked up carefully, and her father drove them home competently enough. Prue was welcoming. When Carrie and Tim left to visit John and Connie, Prue saw them to the front door. "I knew that Marion would be no good for him," she said. "All those flashing diamonds and expensive clothes. She made herself look like the fairy on the top of a Christmas tree." As they walked up the path to John and Connie's new home, Tim said, "They're very lucky to be living here." The evening sun was glinting on the fresh paintwork. John let them in. "Come on in, Carrie. I'm afraid Connie needs cheering up." Connie was lying on the sofa in their small sitting room. "Oh, I'm not feeling too good," she said, sitting up. "I'll be glad when this baby is born. I've had enough. I feel too fat and too lazy to do anything. And I can't wait to get my figure back." "You've nearly done your time," Carrie said in cheery tones. "You won't have to wait much longer." John smiled at them. "The baby's due on Monday." "It's you we've come to see," Tim said, and told him what he'd discovered in Milner's annual accounts. "It has to be fraud." "Marvellous," John understood immediately. He had the contents of Milner's paperwork clear in his mind, though the actual documents were in the office. "And Archie confirms that?" "Yes, we went to see him to make sure. He's very upset. Marion has gone away, left him. She's refused to marry him. He's quite depressed." "He was so sure that she would." Connie was aghast. "He thought she wanted it as much as he did. What's he going to do now?" "I made him come to Prue's for a few days. He can't think straight at the moment, but I think he'll go back to South Africa." I'm surprised he's stayed here so long," Connie said. "You never seemed that settled here." "Come upstairs and see the new nursery. It's the smallest of our 3 bedrooms, and we've just got it finished in time." They all trooped up because John wanted to show off his workmanship. "It's lovely," Carrie said. "Smart enough to be photographed for a magazine." "That's where we got the ideas," Connie beamed. "I made the curtains." "Gosh, John," Tim said. "Did you build these shelves and paint them too?" "Yes, and I painted the cot, and that little cupboard as well. Most of this stuff is second-hand, stuff that people have given to us." "I'm very impressed." End of CD 9.